Chapter 372. Han Qingyun hesitated for a moment, then stood up and walked towards Gu Yunfei again. Gu Yunfei's eyes were no longer as calm and confident as when he had first arrived. All that was left was a look of doubt. Seeing Han Qingyun walk over, Gu Yunfei's heart was suddenly filled with anger. After today's competition, regardless of whether he won or lost, the Tiangongman's reputation would be ruined. Most importantly, he would become the laughingstock of the other elders. Not only that, his full-strength attack had not even been able to break a piece of leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear. He believed that it would not be long before the entire Anwu country knew about this news. He thought about how the streets and alleys would be talking about him in the future. He thought about how the reputation he had built would be destroyed in a day. Gu Yunfei could not hold it in any longer. When Han Qingyun arrived in front of him, he slapped him and said angrily in a low voice, "Look at the trouble you've caused. Could it be that you didn't investigate the other party's background before the competition? Let's see how you're going to clean up after today's mess." Han Qingyun covered his slapped face and said bitterly, "Master, before this, I've already investigated Kikyaman in detail. Kikyaman is just an ordinary small workshop. They don't have any outstanding achievements, nor have they ever made such superb equipment. Your disciple can swear that Kikyaman has never made such equipment, not even once. Not only that, your disciple has also sent people to investigate the equipment Kikyaman sells and tested the defensive capabilities of the equipment they sell. There's nothing out of the ordinary about them. Master, your disciple has already investigated thoroughly. Kikyaman definitely cannot withstand a single blow. There's nothing out of the ordinary about them." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei laughed coldly and pointed at Kikyaman's leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear. "Is this what you mean by unable to withstand a single blow?" At this point, Gu Yunfei snorted coldly and continued, "If this is what you mean by unable to withstand a single blow, then I'd like you to make more of this kind of equipment to raise our Tiangongman's reputation." Han Qingyun sighed. "Master, don't you know your disciple's character? Would your disciple dare to do this if he wasn't 100% confident?" After hearing Han Qingyun's answer, Gu Yunfei couldn't help but give her another slap. "Is this how confident you are? Now, not only have you lost all your face, even I have lost all my face. This is really disgraceful." After being slapped by his master twice in a row, no matter how thick-skinned Han Qingyun was, he still couldn't hold it in any longer. "Master, in order to win this competition for sure, I disregarded the objections of others in the faction and used the deep-sea cold iron, which was already scarce in the first place, to forge equipment. Why, isn't it all for our Heaven's Craftsman faction? If this matter succeeds, it will bring us a lot of benefit. Master, when we first implemented this plan, you also agreed. If you didn't agree, would I dare to do it? Now that something has happened, if you start blaming me, I don't want to. Who would have thought that Kikyaman could make such powerful equipment? If I had known, I definitely wouldn't have made a move on Kikyaman." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei said angrily, "Are you blaming me?" When Han Qingyun heard this, he quickly cupped his fists and said, "I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare." At this point, Han Qingyun paused for a moment before continuing, "Master, since things have already come to this, it's useless for you to blame me. I think we should find a way to salvage the situation as soon as possible." When Gu Yunfei heard this, he knew that Han Qingyun was right. Now was not the time to lose his temper. He could only sigh and say, "What else can we do? Kikyaman's leather armor is too strange. Even if I used all my strength, I still couldn't break through its defense." At this point, Gu Yunfei turned to look at the Tiangongman's equipment made of deep-sea cold iron and adamantine. He sighed again and said helplessly, "I'm afraid that our equipment won't be able to withstand a level 14 attack." When Han Qingyun heard this, he quickly nodded and said, "Master, when I first made this armor, I estimated that it should be able to withstand a level 12 to level 13 attack. Now it's basically at its limit. If there are no accidents, its defense will most likely be broken by a level 14 attack. At this point, Han Qingyun sighed and said, I thought that it would be enough if it could withstand a level 12 attack. I didn't expect their equipment to be so strong. This is really beyond my expectations. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei nodded but didn't say anything. Gu Yunfei had nothing to say. He was Han Qingyun's master, so he was naturally better at making armor. Even if he hadn't seen this armor before, as long as he knew the materials used to make it, he could easily estimate how many level 14 attacks this armor could withstand. Now that this armor could withstand a level 13 attack, it could be considered to have exceeded its limit. To withstand a level 14 attack, in Gu Yunfei's opinion, it was impossible. When the Tiangongman tested the sword just now, he saw a mark. Although the mark wasn't very deep, it was enough to prove that a level 13 sword could cause damage to this armor. In terms of sharpness, a level 14 sword was naturally better than a level 13 sword. If a level 13 sword could cause damage to this armor, then a level 14 sword would definitely be able to cause even more damage. It might even break through the defense. This was all possible. Seeing that his master didn't say anything, Han Qingyun probed, Master, now is not the time to teach your disciple a lesson. Do you have any good ideas to salvage this situation? Hearing this, Gu Yunfei sighed. What else can I do? The opponent's leather armor's defensive power is extremely high. Even under my full power attack, it can actually withstand it. It's really quite difficult to deal with. After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun hurriedly asked, Master, based on your test just now, if you were to attack with a level 14 sword, would you be able to break through the defense of this leather armor? After hearing Han Qingyun's question, Gu Yunfei was silent for a moment before he shook his head with a bitter smile. I don't know. The defense of this leather armor has already exceeded my expectations. Logically speaking, even if the Tiangongman's armor is made of deep-sea cold iron and adamantine, it definitely wouldn't be able to withstand my attack just now. However, this ordinary leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear blocked my attack just now. Right now, I really don't know what the highest defense of Kikyaman's leather armor is. At this point, Gu Yunfei sighed before continuing. I don't know either. Chapter 373. Gu Yunfei continued. I don't know if a level 14 weapon can break through the defense of that leather armor. Han Qingyun sighed. Master, if we can't break through the opponent's defense in the next attack, and our equipment is likely to be destroyed by the opponent, we will lose. At this point, Han Qingyun cupped his fists and bowed to Gu Yunfei. He said softly, Master, we must win this match. I think we can only use that thing now. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei was shocked. He turned around abruptly and grabbed Han Qingyun's shoulder, rejecting him flatly. No, we definitely can't use that thing. Han Qingyun sighed. Master, if we don't use that thing, I'm afraid we will lose this match without a doubt. By then, the influence of the Heaven's Craftsman faction will be greatly reduced, and it will be impossible for us to expand our strength. Not only that, I'm afraid that the foundation of the Heaven's Craftsman faction will also be greatly weakened. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei's expression suddenly changed. Gu Yunfei knew what Han Qingyun wanted to say. Spirit water. In a cave behind the Tiangongman's mountain, there was a cold ice spring. Not far from the cold ice spring, there was also a blazing spring. The water from the cold ice spring was bone-chilling, while the water from the blazing spring could melt gold and refine stone. These two types of spring water were actually useless when used alone. However, the magical part was that the steam from the two types of spring water would condense and drip down from the top of the rock wall above the two types of spring water. This kind of water droplet could only be dripped down 1 drop per year. It was quite rare. Up until now, the Tiangongmen had only collected 21 drops. Although these water droplets were rare, they were quite useful. As long as these water droplets were dripped onto equipment, it would immediately increase the toughness of the equipment. If the toughness of the armor increased, the defensive power would naturally increase as well. Every drop of spirit water could increase the toughness of the equipment by 10%, and the effects could be stacked. This was the idea that Han Qingyun had thought of. The collection of spirit water was too rare. Only 1 drop of spirit water could be collected every year. The Tiangongmen treated the spiritual water as a precious treasure and used it to guard the mountains. Was it necessary to use such a precious item to deal with a small Kikyaman? Gu Yunfei hesitated. Although deep-sea cold iron and gold essence were precious, they could still be bought with a high price. However, things like spirit water were not something that could be bought with money. No matter how much money one had, the amount of water dripping from the cliff would never increase. Thinking of the consequences of using the spirit water, Gu Yunfei couldn't help but frown. No one had ever dared to mention the use of spiritual water, since it meant that the Tiangongmen would have to use their last bit of strength. If anyone dared to suggest using the spiritual water, they would definitely be scolded by the Tiangongmen. Seeing Gu Yunfei frowning and deep in thought, Han Qingyun didn't feel good either. If he lost this competition, and lost to an unknown Kikyaman, then he wouldn't have to think about having a foothold in the Tiangongmen anymore. Although he was deliberately the vice-sect master, he wasn't the sect master after all. If everyone went to the sect master and said that he couldn't do it, then he might really lose his position. The only thing he could do now was to win this competition and salvage the situation. As long as he could win this competition, and under such circumstances, the Tiangongmen's reputation would definitely increase greatly in the future. Kikyaman's equipment was indeed very strong. It had already resisted a level 13 attack. If they defeated Kikyaman under such circumstances, then no one in the entire South County would dare to compete with the Tiangongmen. After all, there were simply too few sects that could make equipment that could resist a level 12 attack. Moreover, even if they could make equipment that could resist a level 12 attack, so what? Wouldn't they still be defeated by the Tiangongmen? Han Qingyun believed that as long as they won this competition, even if he used the spiritual water, the benefits of this competition would definitely be able to make up for the spiritual water used. The most important thing now was to win. As long as they won, everything would be fine. Thinking of this, Han Qingyun cupped his fists again and said, "Master, we can't hesitate anymore. If we lose this competition, we're all finished." Hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei couldn't help but want to slap him again. However, after thinking about it, he held back. Gu Yunfei took a deep breath and said slowly, "Could it be that other than the spiritual water, there is no other way?" Han Qingyun smiled bitterly and shook his head. "If we can reforge the equipment, there are naturally better materials in the warehouse. However, there's no time now. We can only think of a way with this equipment. The only way is to increase the defense of this equipment as soon as possible. Only then can we win this competition." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei sighed. If you had directly used better materials in this competition, you wouldn't have to be in such a difficult position. Han Qingyun smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Master, when I first investigated Kikyaman's background, I thought that using equipment made from deep-sea cold iron and adamantine would be enough to easily crush them. Who knew that it would end up like this?" Gu Yunfei turned his head and looked at Kikyaman's leather armor that was made from the skin of a wild bear. After being stunned for a while, he suddenly said in a hoarse voice, "All right then, we'll do as you say." After saying this, Gu Yunfei let out a long sigh. Seeing that Gu Yunfei had agreed, Han Qingyun was instantly overjoyed. He hurriedly cupped his fists and thanked him. "Thank you, master." Gu Yunfei didn't say anything. He only raised his hand and waved at Han Qingyun, indicating that he should leave. Han Qingyun thought for a while, then turned around and walked over to Han Yuchao. He lowered his voice and gave him a few instructions before returning to his seat. Seeing Han Yuchao quickly run out of the competition venue, Han Qingyun let out a long sigh of relief. He sat back in his chair and closed his eyes to rest. This action of Han Qingyun's was naturally taken in by everyone's eyes. However, Han Qingyun and Gu Yunfei spoke very softly. They could only see the two of them whispering to each other, but they didn't know what they were talking about. Seeing Han Qingyun close his eyes to rest, Sun Qiao was puzzled. Just now, his leather armor had withstood a level 13 attack, and the Tiangongman's equipment had a mark. Logically speaking, Han Qingyun should be nervous. But why was he only nervous at the beginning, and after talking to Gu Yunfei, his expression became calm? Could it be that Han Qingyun still had some tricks up his sleeve? Sun Qiao thought carefully. Han Qingyun might have some tricks up his sleeve, but after thinking for a long time, she still couldn't figure out what had restored Han Qingyun's confidence. The spirit water was the Tiangongman's secret. Naturally, outsiders wouldn't know about it. Chapter 374. This time, the wait was longer. Everyone waited for a full 15 minutes before Han Yuchao ran back with sweat all over his forehead. Han Yuchao came in front of Gu Yunfei, took out a porcelain bottle, and handed it over. Grand Advisor, the spiritual water is here. Gu Yunfei took the porcelain bottle, opened the seal on the bottle, and looked inside. The Tiangongman had a total of 21 drops of spiritual water. Every 5 drops were sealed in a porcelain bottle. This time, Han Yuchao brought an entire bottle with a total of 5 drops of spiritual water. Looking at the spiritual water in the bottle, Gu Yunfei was a little reluctant to part with it. Every drop used was 1 drop less. If he wanted to increase it, he would need a year to obtain 1 drop. Now, in order to deal with Kikiaman's leather armor, he had to use 5 drops of spiritual water. After looking at it for a long time, Gu Yunfei slowly walked to the Tiangongman's armor made of deep-sea cold iron and adamantine. He sighed, then slowly poured the spiritual water in his hand onto the armor. Sun Qiao looked at Gu Yunfei's actions with some confusion. She did not understand why he poured water onto the armor. The most important thing was that there were only a few drops of water in the bottle. Looking at the few drops of water flowing on the armor, they gradually merged into the armor. Seeing this, although Sun Qiao did not know what it was, she could vaguely guess what it was. The medicinal water that Gu Yunfei poured on the armor should be the kind of medicinal water used to make leather armor. Although she knew that the water was medicinal water, Sun Qiao was still very confused. Although the medicinal water had a certain effect, the effect was definitely not very strong. Just as Sun Qiao was puzzled, the spiritual water had completely merged into the armor. The next moment the armor flashed with a faint white light, then disappeared. Seeing this scene, Sun Qiao could no longer hold it in. She turned to look at Han Qingyun and asked curiously, "What are you doing? What are you trying to do?" Hearing Sun Qiao's question, Han Qingyun shook his head, not knowing whether to agree or disagree. Nothing. Seeing that she could not get anything out of Han Qingyun, Sun Qiao quickly turned her head and looked at the armor again. The armor was still shining with a golden light, as if nothing had changed. However, Sun Qiao knew that those few drops of medicine must have had some effect. Otherwise, Han Qingyun would not be so calm. Sun Qiao didn't know what potion Gu Yunzhang had poured on the equipment, but some of the judges knew. As the third disciple of the sword crafting sect, Yun Jianbai naturally knew many secrets. When Han Yuchao handed Si Ping to Gu Yunfei, he had already vaguely guessed what was in the porcelain bottle. The gate spirit water of the Tiangongman. This was something that Yun Jianbai's master had mentioned to him by chance. Yun Jianbai's master, Guan Jianxing, happened to find a good sword when he was forging. He told Yun Jianbai that if he dripped a drop of the Tiangongman's spirit water on it, the quality of the sword would immediately rise by 1 level. Hearing his master say that there was something that could improve the quality of the sword, Yun Jianbai hurriedly asked. Only then did Guan Jianxing tell Yun Jianbai about the spirit water. In the end, Guan Jianxing sighed and said, "Spirit water is a rare treasure in the world. It can instantly raise the quality of equipment by 1 level." From then on, Yun Jianbai knew about this treasure called spirit water. When Gu Yunfei looked at the item in the porcelain bottle with a pious look, Yun Jianbai was even more certain that the item in the bottle was spirit water. Understanding this point, Yun Jianbai couldn't help but take in a breath of cold air. He didn't expect that in order to fight with Kikyaman, Han Qingyun not only used the limited amount of deep-sea cold iron and gold essence, but also invited Gu Yunfei. In the end, he even took out the Tiangongman's gate spirit water. Yun Jianbai turned to look at Han Qingyun, his heart somewhat shocked. At this moment, he completely understood that Han Qingyun could only win and not lose. No matter what price he had to pay, Han Qingyun would not allow failure. Yun Jianbai looked at Gu Yunfei pouring the spirit water from the porcelain bottle onto the equipment. Looking at the water flow just now, it should be about 4 or 5 drops. Yun Jianbai heard from his master that each drop of spirit water could increase the hardness of the equipment by 10%, which was also 10% of the defensive power. How much would 4 or 5 drops of spirit water increase the defensive power? Yun Jianbai silently calculated in his heart. Just now, the Tiangongman's equipment had withstood a level 12 attack. If the spirit water's effect was added, it might be able to withstand a level 17 or 18 attack. Thinking of this, Yun Jianbai's forehead broke out in cold sweat. To be able to withstand a level 17 or 18 attack, how heaven-defying was that? Originally, he thought that Kikyaman's leather armor was already heaven-defying enough to withstand a level 13 or 14 attack. Now, the Tiangongman's equipment had far surpassed Kikyaman's leather armor. Thinking about how the Tiangongman's equipment had increased their defensive power by so much, Lin Jianbai sighed in his heart. He turned his head and looked at Sun Qiaoer sympathetically. Kikyaman's equipment had already opened his eyes today. He did not expect that it could increase their defensive power by so much. In the end, he did not expect that it would lose to the Tiangongman's treasure, the spirit water. What a pity! What a pity! What a pity for that high-quality leather armor! As the deputy leader of the Tiangongman, Han Qingyun naturally knew how much spirit water the porcelain bottle in Gu Yunfei's hand could contain. 5 drops. Seeing Gu Yunfei pour the entire bottle of spirit water on the equipment, Han Qingyun's heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally relaxed completely. No one knew better than him how much the defensive power of the equipment would increase with these 5 drops of spirit water. Han Qingyun nodded his head in satisfaction as he looked at the white light that flashed on the equipment made of deep-sea frosty iron and adamantine. The white light that flashed on the equipment meant that the spirit water had completely merged with the equipment, and the defensive power of the equipment had increased correspondingly. Han Qingyun turned his head to look at Sun Qiaoer and said with a smile, "Leader Sun, you really surprised me today. A piece of wild bear skin can actually be used to make leather armor with such high defensive power. It's really unexpected." Hearing Han Qingyun's relaxed words and seeing the calm smile on his face, Sun Qiaoer's heart suddenly hung in the air. She thought about the medicine that Gu Yunfei had poured on the equipment and the white light that had flashed on the equipment. Sun Qiaoer suddenly realized that the medicine that had been poured on the armor was definitely not an ordinary medicine. It must be very useful. Thinking of this, Sun Qiaoer could not be bothered to answer Han Qingyun's question. She hurriedly asked, "Leader Han, what did Senior Gu pour on the equipment? Is it a medicine that can increase the defensive power?" Hearing Sun Qiaoer's question, Han Qingyun nodded calmly. That's right. It's a potion that can increase one's defense. Sect leader Sun has good eyesight indeed. With just one look, you've understood the use of this item. Chapter 375. Hearing Han Qingyun's answer, Sun Xiaoer was shocked. Although she had already guessed that those few drops of potion were definitely potions that increased defense, she knew that this potion was not simple when she saw Han Qingyun's expression. After a moment of silence, Sun Xiaoer suddenly flew into a rage. She slammed the table and said angrily, Han Qingyun, what's wrong with you? Don't you think it's shameless to use such a method in the middle of the competition? Han Qingyun did not care at all. He just waved his hand and said, Sect Master Sun, it's not written in our contract. Since it's not written, it means that I can do anything as long as it's within the scope of the contract. At this point, Han Qingyun paused for a moment before continuing, of course, since we can do this, Sect Master Sun can do the same too. No matter what kind of defense you add to your equipment now, I won't mind. Don't worry, I won't be as stingy as you, haha. Looking at Han Qingyun, who was laughing proudly, Sun Xiaoer said angrily, Han Qingyun, you're too despicable. In order to win this competition, you're willing to use all kinds of methods. You're really disappointing. Hearing Sun Xiaoer's words, Han Qingyun clapped his hands and said with a smile, Sect Master Sun, you're right. As long as I can win this competition, I'll use all kinds of methods. As long as I can win, I don't care about anything. At this point, Han Qingyun's eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of coldness. Sect leader Sun, I advise you not to fight with me, so as not to hurt the harmony between everyone. Anyway, you're going to lose in the end, so why do you have to make such a pointless struggle? Looking at the despicable Han Qingyun, Sun Xiaoer was so angry that she gritted her teeth, but there was nothing she could do. There was indeed no such clause in the contract. In other words, what Han Qingyun did was absolutely within the rules. In the past, no one had noticed this because everyone had a moral bottom line. No one could be so shameless. They knew that Kikyaman's equipment was leather armor, but they still wanted to use equipment made of deep-sea cold iron and adamantine for the competition. Seeing that they couldn't win, they even invited the elders of their sect to use brute force to win this competition. In the end, they even used an even more despicable method to temporarily increase the defensive power of the equipment. This simply refreshed Sun Xiaoer's thoughts. She originally thought that Han Qingyun, as the leader of a large sect like the Tiangongmen, would at least have to abide by some rules. She did not expect Han Qingyun to do such a thing. Although Sun Xiaoer was furious, she couldn't do anything about it. Although Han Qingyun was despicable and shameless, the contract didn't specify this point, which made her feel helpless. Just as Sun Xiaoer was at a loss for what to do, she heard Yun Jianbai's voice. Sect Master Han, the few drops of water that Senior Gu dripped onto the equipment, is that the legendary spirit water? Hearing Yun Jianbai's question, Han Qingyun could not help but clap and praise, as expected of the third disciple of the sword crafting sect. Your knowledge is indeed different. You even recognize our sect's treasure, the spirit water. Truly amazing. At this point, Han Qingyun paused for a moment before continuing, that's right, this is spirit water that can increase one's defense. Hearing Han Qingyun's answer, Yun Jianbai instantly exclaimed. Just now, he was only guessing. He did not expect the Tiangongmen to take out such a treasure in order to win this competition. Thinking that such a precious treasure was used in such a situation, Yun Jianbai's heart ached as he sighed. Sect Master Han, it's too wasteful. Such a rare treasure was wasted on this equipment made of deep-sea cold iron. What a waste! After hearing Yun Jianbai's words, Han Qingyun only smiled faintly and glanced at Sun Xiaoer from the corner of his eyes before slowly saying, Brother Yun, this is mainly due to Sect Master Sun's strength. he was able to forge a piece of armor made of wild bear skin into such a superb equipment. Since Kikyaman can have such good equipment, why would we Tiangongmen be stingy with these few drops of spirit water? Sect Master Sun, don't you think so? Hearing Yun Jianbai's words just now, Sun Xiaoer was already extremely shocked. In her eyes, equipment made of deep-sea cold iron must be rare equipment. She did not expect Yun Jianbai to say that equipment made of deep-sea cold iron was not worthy of this drop of spirit water. In this case, the spirit water was something even more precious than deep-sea cold iron. No, it was something far more precious than deep-sea cold iron. Thinking of this, Sun Xiaoer looked at Han Qingyun in shock. She did not expect Han Qingyun to pay such a huge price just to deal with her. Just as Sun Xiaoer was still in shock, Yun Jianbai's voice reached her ears again. Sect Master Han, what a pity! I once heard from my master that a drop of spirit water can increase a piece of equipment's defense by 10%. I wonder if this is true. In order to increase the Tiangongmen's influence and not let others know how many treasures the Tiangongmen had, Han Qingyun naturally answered Yun Jianbai's question frankly. That's right. What your master said is true. Every drop of spirit water can increase a piece of equipment's defense by 10%. This is definitely true. Speaking of this, Han Qingyun turned to look at Sun Xiaoer and laughed. Oh right, Sect Master Sun, the effects of this spirit water can be stacked. I think I just saw my master pour a total of 5 drops of spirit water on that piece of equipment. Sigh. I wonder how much it can increase a piece of equipment's defense. Oh right, Sect Master Sun, I wonder if your equipment can withstand it. Haha. At the end, Han Qingyun could no longer hold it in and began to laugh loudly. Looking at Han Qingyun, who could not stop laughing, Sun Xiaoer only felt more and more guilty. She did not even have the energy to be angry. Han Qingyun was right. When Gu Yunfei was pouring the spirit water, Sun Xiaoer was also staring at it. She was sure that there were 5 drops of spirit water. A drop of spirit water could increase a piece of equipment's defense by 10% and the effects could be stacked. A total of 5 drops of spirit water. How much defense would that increase? At the thought of this, Sun Xiaoer's brows furrowed into a fried dough twist. Her heart gradually sank as if it had sunk into a 1,000-year-old ice cellar. She slowly fell into a cold place, causing her whole body to shiver. According to Sun Xiaoer's estimation, equipment made of deep-sea cold iron and adamantine could originally withstand a level 13 attack. With the addition of these 5 drops of spirit water, it could probably withstand a level 18 or 19 attack. This change had already caused Sun Xiaoer's mind to go blank. Sun Xiaoer naturally knew how terrifying a level 18 or 19 attack was. If the Tiangongmen's equipment could withstand such a powerful attack, could her own leather armor? Chapter 376. The competition continued. The level 12 competition was over, and the level 13 competition was about to begin. Gu Yunfei took the saber from Han Yuchao and walked over to the Kikyaman's leather armor. Gu Yunfei took a deep breath and repeated the same trick. With a thought, the true qi surged around his body, once again bringing up a large cloud of smoke and dust, blocking everyone's line of sight. Gu Yunfei sneered as he stood in the cloud of dust. He raised the saber in his hand and activated his true qi. A 1-foot-long blue light flashed on the tip of the saber. Seeing that the surrounding dust had completely obscured the audience's vision, Gu Yunfei growled and stabbed the saber in his hand into the Kikyaman's leather armor. Gu Yunfei had used a slashing method in his previous 2 attacks. The Kikyaman's leather armor was covered with a layer of heavenly silk. Gu Yunfei suspected that it was the heavenly silk that was causing trouble. That was why he couldn't cut the leather armor. In Gu Yunfei's opinion, the leather armor had been soaked in medicinal water. Other than that, there was only a thin layer of heavenly silk on the outside of the leather armor. Gu Yunfei was sure that the Kikyaman couldn't have spirit water. Even if the Kikyaman had spirit water, Gu Yunfei wouldn't be afraid. Gu Yunfei knew very well how strong the defense of the wild bear's skin was. Even if 10 drops of spirit water were poured on the skin, it wouldn't be able to block his attack. If that wasn't the case, then the problem must be the heavenly silk on the outside of the leather armor. With this idea in mind, he naturally had to give it a try. Therefore, Gu Yunfei used the method of breaking the surface of the leather armor at a single point to attack it. Gu Yunfei's idea was good, but as soon as the tip of his saber pierced the leather armor, he felt that something was wrong. The tip of the saber stopped moving after piercing the leather armor. Gu Yunfei could only sigh when he felt this sensation on his hand. Then, he retreated from the smoke. After the dust settled and the equipment was seen clearly, the audience cheered again. However, the judges' table was silent again. Not only was the judges' table silent, but there were also sighs. Looking at the intact leather armor, Yun Jianbai sighed. Even though the leather armor could withstand a level 13 attack, it did not matter. That piece of equipment, which was made of deep-sea cold iron and adamantine, could withstand a level 18 or level 19 attack immediately after being dripped with 5 drops of spirit water. Yun Jianbai sighed in his heart. What a pity for this leather armor. In this world, there were also leather armors that could see level 13 attacks, but that was different. Those leather armors that could withstand level 13 attacks were undoubtedly made from superior materials. It was precisely because of the quality of the materials that equipment could withstand level 13 attacks. However, the leather armor in front of him was different. It was made from the skin of an ordinary wild bear. Kikyaman's leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear could actually withstand a level 13 attack. No, Gu Yunfei was the one making the armor. Although the testing sword was only level 13, everyone knew that when Gu Yunfei used a level 13 sword, the effect would definitely be more than level 13. This kind of leather armor that subverted everyone's understanding was simply breathtaking. It was a pity that the people in the audience did not know the real situation, but the people on the judging platform already knew about the spirit water. Yun Jianbai really felt that it was not worth it for the Tiangongmen. Such a precious spirit water was actually used in such a worthless way. Think about it, if you created a piece of superior equipment and then dripped the spirit water on it, how big of an effect would it have? When he thought of this result, Yun Jianbai was extremely moved. Looking at the undamaged leather armor, Sun Qiaoer did not feel happy at all. She only felt sad. So what if it could withstand a level 13 attack? Could it withstand a level 18 attack? Sun Qiaoer didn't even dare to think about whether or not her wilderness bear leather armor would be able to withstand a level 18 attack. Sun Qiaoer knew all too well how powerful a level 18 attack was. No matter what, Sun Qiaoer did not believe that a piece of leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear could withstand a level 18 attack. To be able to withstand a level 13 attack was already all thanks to Prince Zhang's ancestral skill. Most importantly, Sun Qiaoer admitted that Prince Zhang's ancestral skill was very powerful, but a skill was a skill after all. Could not reach a state where it could defy the heavens. To be able to make a piece of leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear resist a level 13 attack was already on the verge of defying the heavens. Sun Qiaoer even thought that Prince Zhang would not be able to withstand a level 14 attack. Perhaps, when Gu Yunfei used a level 14 attack, the leather armor would be torn apart. Yes, that's right. Under Gu Yunfei's powerful attack, as long as the leather armor's defense was broken, it would immediately be shattered. The next test was the Tiangongmen's equipment. Without any suspense, after the spirit water's enhancement, the defense of this piece of equipment made from deep-sea cold iron and adamantine immediately increased. Originally, a level 13 attack would have already left a mark on the equipment, but after the spirit water dripped on it, the level 14 sword easily bounced off, leaving no mark. It was as if it had never been hit at all. Seeing this scene, the judges were still silent. This was because they already knew that with the Spirit Water's enhancement, not to mention a level 14 attack, even a level 15 attack would be easily blocked. The judges knew this fact, but the people in the audience did not. The level 13 sword had already left a mark on this piece of equipment. Many people guessed that this piece of equipment would be destroyed under a level 14 attack. But they did not expect that the piece of equipment that was damaged by a level 13 sword would not be damaged at all by a level 14 sword. This change made the people in the audience unable to believe their eyes. After a short moment of silence, the audience immediately fell into a chaotic discussion. What's going on? Why didn't the defense break? Could it be that the Tiangongmen are cheating? Hearing the discussion in the audience, Sun Qiao sneered in her heart. She couldn't help but turn around and look at Han Qingyun. Sect Master Han, did you hear that? Someone said that you guys are cheating? Hearing Sun Qiao's question, Han Qingyun waved his hand and said indifferently, cheating? So what if I'm cheating? Ha ha ha. Han Qingyun laughed for a while before continuing. Sect Master Sun, if you're so capable, you can cheat too. I won't stop you, ha ha. Hearing Han Qingyun's shameless words, Sun Qiao was so angry that she didn't know what to say. After a while, she said angrily, Han Qingyun, you're too despicable. Hearing this, Han Qingyun sneered, despicable? What do you mean by despicable? We Tiangongmen are rich and have countless treasures. Can we just watch as we lose the competition and not use the treasures that belong to us Tiangongmen? Sect Master Sun, wouldn't I be too stupid? Chapter 377. The match continued. Next, both sides would be facing a level 15 attack. Sun Qiao looked at Gu Yunfei, who was already holding a sword in his hand. Based on past experience, the leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear could at most withstand a level 5 attack. Now, however, it had to withstand a level 15 attack. Zhang Meng's ancestral skill had increased the defense by a whole 10 levels. Could it withstand a level 15 attack? More importantly, with Gu Yunfei attacking, it wouldn't be just a level 15 attack. Thinking of this, Sun Qiao subconsciously looked at Zhang Meng, who was sitting in the audience, hoping to gain some confidence from him. Han Qingyun, who was no longer worried, had been secretly observing Sun Qiao's movements. When he saw Sun Qiao looking at the audience, his heart skipped a beat, and he quickly followed Sun Qiao's gaze. Sure enough, just as Han Qingyun had guessed, Sun Qiao's gaze was on the young man. Han Qingyun had originally suspected that there was something fishy about Kikiamen's armor. Based on his experience, even if he didn't know how to make leather armor, he knew that it was almost impossible to make a leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear reach such a high level of defense. Unless the Qiqiao sect also had a treasure like the Spirit Water, they wouldn't be able to do this. But could Kikiamen have a treasure like the Spirit Water? Needless to say, Han Qingyun knew that it was impossible. It wasn't that Han Qingyun looked down on Kikiamen, but it was the truth. As the deputy leader of the Tiangongmen, his knowledge should be quite extensive. But until now, as the deputy leader of the Tiangongmen, Han Qingyun had never heard of any treasure other than the Spirit Water that could increase a piece of equipment's defense so much. If Kikiamen really had such a treasure, then after so many years, they would have used it once or twice. It could be said that as long as Kikiamen used such a treasure, Han Qingyun would definitely know. Han Qingyun was meticulous and careful. No matter what he did, he would only do it when he was in a foolproof state. In this competition between the Tiangongmen and Kikiamen, Kikiamen was only focused on making equipment, but the Tiangongmen's Han Qingyun was definitely not having an easy time. In order to investigate Kikiamen's background, Han Qingyun had already sent people to investigate the entire South County. Basically, the Tiangongmen had investigated all the equipment sold by Kikiamen. The final conclusion was that Kikiamen was just an ordinary sect. There was nothing special about it. It was precisely because Kikyaman was too common that Han Qinyun decided to start with Kikyaman. However, what Han Qinyun did not expect was that Kikyaman's leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear could actually resist a level 14 attack. This was already beyond Han Qinyun's expectations. Han Qinyun knew that there was definitely a problem. With Kikyaman's strength, they definitely could not reach such a level. Then, what was the problem? Han Qinyun thought hard and thought of all the possibilities, but he still could not figure out where the problem was. Seeing that Sun Qiao was actually looking at that young man at the most dangerous moment, Han Qinyun began to have some doubts. Could the problem be with that young man? Looking at the young man sitting on the spectator's stand, who had been smiling the entire time, Han Qinyun's frown deepened. Was that really the case? Han Qinyun turned his head to look at Sun Qiao. He saw that Sun Qiao's originally nervous expression had actually calmed down. Han Qinyun's heart suddenly beat wildly. He was now basically certain that the problem was with that young man. Thinking of this, Han Qinyun stopped watching the competition and stopped looking at Sun Qiao. He only stared at that young man. He wanted to see what was wrong with that young man. Han Qinyun was puzzled. Gu Yunfei was even more puzzled. He did not understand why his attack just now could not break through the defense of this leather armor. This was really too strange. Gu Yunfei was certain that if his attack just now had hit his own equipment, it would definitely have been smashed into pieces. However, such a powerful attack had not damaged this leather armor at all. He had already tried using a knife to cut this leather armor, but it did not work. He had also tried using a knife to stab this leather armor, but it did not work either. Then, what should he do for his next attack? Gu Yunfei was in a difficult position. As the second elder of the Heaven's Craftsman faction, he actually couldn't break through the defense of a piece of leather armor even with a level 14 offensive weapon. If word of this got out, wouldn't he become a laughingstock? However, what kind of attack should he use? Looking at the leather armor in front of him, Gu Yunfei suddenly gritted his teeth and secretly made up his mind. Ever since Gu Yunfei made his move, Leng Yelyo had already hidden far away. Gu Yunfei's strength was very strong. She did not want to be affected by the attack at the side. Although Leng Yelyo was standing far away, her eyes were wide open. She stared closely at the situation that was happening over here. Leng Yelyo saw that Gu Yunfei hesitated for a moment and then began to swing his knife again. In the next moment, just like before, smoke and dust rose everywhere. The flying smoke and dust grew bigger and bigger. It enveloped Gu Yunfei and the leather armor. Standing at Leng Yelyo's position, she could no longer see Gu Yunfei's figure. She could only see a sky full of dust floating in the air. Following Gu Yunfei's low roar, Leng Yelyo felt the smoke and dust in front of her suddenly fluctuate rapidly. A moment later, a figure flew out of the smoke and dust and stood outside the smoke and dust. The person who flew out of the smoke and dust was Gu Yunfei. After he left the smoke and dust, he sneered at the direction of the smoke and dust. Just now, when he attacked, he still used a slashing method. However, although it was a slashing this time, it was definitely not an ordinary slashing method. Gu Yunfei's martial arts were very strong. He had a unique skill called triple wave. As the name implied, the meaning of triple wave was to be able to attack 3 times in a row in an instant. This was not a simple 3 slashes. Each slash was heavier than the previous one. If the first slash was 1 point sharp, the second slash would become 2 points of strength, and the third slash would become 3 points of strength. This method of stacking strength was Gu Yunfei's unique skill, triple wave. The reason why Gu Yunfei made the smoke and dust around him was to use his unique skill, triple wave. Amidst the smoke and dust, Gu Yunfei used his unique skill, triple wave, on the leather armor, increasing the power of his attack greatly. In this attack, although Gu Yunfei did not feel the blade cutting into the leather armor, he did not care. The blade of a level 15 knife was abnormally sharp. It was definitely not an exaggeration to say that it could cut through hair. For such a sharp blade to cut into the leather armor, even if it was as if it was nothing, it was not surprising at all. Gu Yunfei didn't believe that this leather armor could remain intact under the attack of his 3 heavy waves. Gu Yunfei had been famous for many years. He was very confident in his attack power. He believed that after this slash, the competition should be over. Chapter 378. As the dust in the arena gradually dispersed, Kikyaman's leather armor, which was made from the skin of a wild bear, appeared before everyone's eyes. Gu Yunfei was the closest to it. Before the dust had completely dispersed, he was stunned. His face was full of disbelief. The leather armor was still on the shelf, undamaged. Gu Yunfei blinked hard, trying to make sure that his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. No, his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. His ferocious attack just now didn't cause any damage to the leather armor. There wasn't even a mark left on the surface. It was as if Gu Yunfei hadn't attacked the leather armor at all. Gu Yunfei was shocked. He didn't expect that his ultimate skill, Triple Wave, wouldn't be able to break through the defense of the leather armor. Looking at the equipment in front of him, Gu Yunfei lost his initial calmness. He started to regret coming here. He shouldn't have gotten involved in this mess. If he hadn't come, even if his disciple, Han Qingyun, lost, it would be his own business. It wouldn't have anything to do with Gu Yunfei. But now, he couldn't. He had already come to the arena. If he lost this match, he would be doomed eternally. Gu Yunfei kept thinking in his mind. What kind of battle tactic would he need to use to break the leather armor in his next attack? Looking at the dejected Gu Yunfei, Han Qingyun wasn't surprised. Instead, he was happy. As Gu Yunfei's disciple, he naturally knew how strong Gu Yunfei was. Although the attacks just now seemed powerful, Han Qingyun knew that Gu Yunfei hadn't shown his true ability. As the second elder of the Tiangongmen, how could he not have some trump cards? As long as Gu Yunfei was angry, he would show his true ability. Han Qingyun was sure that if Gu Yunfei showed his true ability, the strength of his attacks would definitely double. Now, both of their equipment could only withstand level 15 attack. This kind of attack, for the equipment made of deep-sea cold iron and fine gold, was indeed impossible to withstand. However, with the support of the spirit water, it could easily withstand level 15 attack. Han Qingyun guessed that if there weren't too many accidents, this equipment wouldn't have a problem withstanding level 18 attacks. Of course, this was only Han Qingyun's guess. After all, the spiritual water was so precious, and he had never used it before. He only knew that when this spirit water was discovered, someone had used this spirit water in an experiment to test its effects. The conclusion was that buying a drop of this spirit water could increase one's defense by 10%. As for whether it could really increase one's defense by 10%, no one knew, and no one dared to experiment with such a precious spirit water. Even so, Han Qingyun was certain that his equipment could definitely withstand level 15 attack. Before level 18 attacks, there would be no problems at all. What Han Qingyun was thinking about now was how to destroy the opponent's wallet between level 18 and level 15 attacks. The only thing he could rely on now was Gu Yunfei. Only when Gu Yunfei used his full strength would he be able to break the wallet. And now, Gu Yunfei was on the verge of exploding. Han Qingyun believed that when he attacked at level 16, Gu Yunfei would explode with his full strength. This was indeed the case. Gu Yunfei was furious and had already started to get angry. He was ready to use his full strength to destroy the leather armor that had humiliated him. After the Tiangongmen's equipment passed the level 15 test, it was time for the level 16 test. Gu Yunfei took the level 16 sword that Han Yuchao handed to him and gripped the hilt tightly as he walked towards the Kikyaman's leather armor. In all these years, There hadn't been anyone worthy of Gu Yunfei's full strength. Now, he was going to attack a piece of equipment with his full strength. When he arrived in front of the Kikiaman's leather armor, Gu Yunfei groaned. In an instant, the surrounding smoke and dust rose, blocking everyone's vision once again. In the smoke and dust, no one could see that Gu Yunfei's eyes slowly turned red. The joints on his arms started to crack and his muscles started to swell. In the blink of an eye, his arms were much thicker than before. Gu Yunfei felt the power in his arms and took a deep breath. True qi started to flow in his body and gradually gathered in his arms. The level 16 sword in his hand also spewed out red sword light. At this moment, Gu Yunfei was truly in his strongest state. Feeling the majestic power in his body, Gu Yunfei couldn't help but roar to the sky. A moment later, there was a long tail of light in his hand as he slashed towards the leather armor like an avalanche. Han Qingyun had been staring intently at the smoke and dust that had been rising from the ground. Although there was a lot of smoke and dust on the field, the red sword light emitted by Gu Yunfei's sword was too dazzling. Amidst the smoke and dust, Han Qingyun saw the red saber light. Only now did Han Qingyun feel completely relieved. The blue sword light was just a normal attack, but the red sword light was different. This meant that Gu Yunfei had used his full strength. Han Qingyun believed that not many people in the entire South County could block Gu Yunfei's full strength. Even Ye Tianhao's master, Jiang Nantian, the leader of the Sky Sword sect, had to be careful. Han Qingyun didn't believe that a piece of leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear could block such a powerful attack. The red sword light flashed in the smoke and dust. Han Qingyun wasn't the only one who saw it. Nie Tianhao from the Sky Sword sect also saw it. Nie Tianhao was shocked when he saw the red blade light. Even he would not be able to block such a powerful attack. Nie Tianhao had been practicing swordsmanship for more than 30 years. Until now, he could only make the sword in his hand emit a 1-foot-long blue sword light. Nie Tianhao naturally understood what the red sword light meant. He didn't expect Gu Yunfei's martial arts to be so powerful that he could emit a red sword light. Seeing this, Nie Tianhao could only sigh. He knew that Kikiaman's leather armor was finished. Such a powerful attack could even split mountains. No matter how high the defense of a leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear was, it couldn't block such a powerful attack. Even if Kikiaman's leather armor could block a level 16 sword light, Gu Yunfei's power was enough to shatter the leather armor. Nie Tianhao turned to look at Sun Qiao. He only wanted to ask if Kikiaman still had such a powerful armor. If there was only one such armor, it would be a pity if it was destroyed by Gu Yunfei. Nie Tianhao inwardly lamented that it was a pity, but Yun Jianbai didn't feel the slightest bit of pity. He was only thinking about what method the Seven Skills sect had used to make an armor made from the skin of a wild bear have such terrifying defensive capabilities. Chapter 379. Yun Jianbai knew very well that if he could find out about this method, it would definitely be of great help to his sword forging. This time, Gu Yunfei's attack was not as silent as the previous few times. Instead, it made a muffled sound. After this muffled sound, countless vital energies surged in all directions in the smoke and dust, floating even further away. Not only that, but the people in front of the spectators' stand were also shaken by the strong wind after that muffled sound. Their ears were buzzing, and some of the weaker people even faintly felt like vomiting. Sun Qiao grabbed her clothes, which were fluttering in the wind, and felt a burst of shock in her heart. She could actually feel such a powerful energy fluctuation from so far away. Just now, a slightly larger speck of dust in the smoke and dust had hit Sun Qiao's face, causing her to feel a faint pain. Sun Qiao stared blankly at the smoke and dust in the competition venue. Her mind had long been blank because of the shock. She was just a small Kikiaman sect master, and had never seen such a powerful explosion of power. Now she had seen it. However, such a powerful explosion of power was actually caused by the leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear. The surroundings were quiet, and no one dared to speak. Everyone was waiting for the smoke and dust to dissipate. Gu Yunfei retreated from the smoke and dust, took a deep breath, and began to adjust his turbulent vital energy. That attack just now was indeed his strongest power. However, although the power this time was much stronger than before, the current Gu Yunlong was not as confident as before. This was because he did not see any fragments of the leather armor in the smoke and dust. Gu Yunfei was very clear that even if the leather armor couldn't withstand his strength, it would still fly all over the place. However, Gu Yunfei searched for a long time in the smoke and dust, but did not find any fragments of the leather armor. Seeing this scene, Gu Yunfei's heart began to beat faster. Although he was very confident in his own power, that leather armor was too strange. Now, he had become somewhat unconfident. The smoke and dust slowly settled on the ground. Although it had not completely dissipated, the crowd could still see the leather armor standing in the smoke and dust clearly. Gu Yunfei looked at the leather armor in shock. He was the closest to it, so naturally, he could see it the most clearly. After such a powerful attack, the leather armor was still hanging on the hanger without a scratch. How is this possible? Gu Yunfei could not help but exclaim. A level 16 saber, coupled with his full power, could not even break the leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear. If this were to spread, who would believe it? Gu Yunfei was certain that the power of his attack just now, even if it was a huge rock as big as a house, was split in half. However, the leather armor was still intact. Han Qingyun was truly shocked this time. Master's attack just now had indeed erupted with his full strength. But why couldn't such a powerful attack break through the armor's defense? At that moment, Han Kikiaman's attack, Kikiaman, even a level 16 saber and his master's full power couldn't do anything to the 7 possibilities sex leather armor, which was made from the skin of a wild bear. What should I do? Han Qingyun, who was originally as calm as water, was now a little anxious. After the level 16 test, Xiaomen was only level 17 before level 18. His master's powerful attack had actually failed. What should I do? Han Qingyun's forehead broke out in cold sweat again as he pondered. What should I do next? He had expected his equipment to be able to withstand a level 18 attack, but Kikiaman's equipment was catching up. At this moment, although Han Qingyun was still sitting there without moving, he was extremely anxious in his heart. His master had used all his strength. In Han Qingyun's opinion, even if his master used a level 17 saber, he might not be able to break the armor. What should I do? Thinking of this, Han Qingyun could no longer sit still. He hurriedly stood up and walked towards Gu Yunfei. Although he could not think of a solution, it did not mean that his master could not think of one. Han Qingyun quickly walked in front of Gu Yunfei and said in a low voice, "Master, what should I do?" Gu Yunlong, who was already feeling embarrassed, was furious when he saw Han Qingyun. If it were not for this rascal, he would not have to come here to embarrass himself. Thinking of this, Gu Yunlong raised his hand again and slapped Han Qingyun hard. He said angrily, "Is this the result of your investigation?" Han Qingyun naturally knew why Gu Yunlong was angry. If he were in Gu Yunlong's shoes, he would have done the same. Covering his red face, Han Qingyun said in a low voice, "Master, even if you beat me to death now, it won't solve the problem." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunlong took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He also knew that this was not the time to be angry. "Then tell me, now that things have come to this, what else can I do?" Han Qingyun heard this and quickly said in a low voice, "Master, I remember that you still have an ultimate skill that you haven't used. Later, why don't you use all your strength together with your ultimate skill? I think it should be able to double your strength." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei sighed and nodded. Indeed, it can double my strength. Han Qingyun said, if that's the case, then please use all your strength together with your ultimate skill. I think it should work. Gu Yunlong heard this and sighed again. That's the only way. This equipment is too strange. In all these years, this old man has never seen such a strange equipment. A leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear can reach such a level. I'm afraid no one would believe me if I told them. After saying this, Gu Yunfei turned to look at Han Qingyun and asked with a frown, didn't you find anything wrong with my attacks? After hearing Gu Yunfei's question, Han Qingyun shook his head. No, I didn't find anything wrong with it. Gu Yunfei heard this and said doubtfully, could it be that Kikyamin used some secret technique to increase the defense of this equipment? Han Qingyun shook his head. Logically speaking, that shouldn't be the case. Kikyamin is only a small sect and there are only a dozen people in total. Before the competition, I had already sent people to investigate these people thoroughly. They were all ordinary people, and there was no possibility that any of them had a secret technique. Gu Yunfei heard this and nodded. Indeed, there shouldn't be such a secret technique. If there really was such a secret technique, wouldn't it be a heaven-defying existence? After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun couldn't help but frown. Kikyamin's most skilled craftsman is undoubtedly Kikyamin's leader, Sun Qiao. However, I have also investigated Sun Qiao several times. Chapter 380. Han Qingyun continued, Sun Qiao's manufacturing technique is a family heirloom. I've never heard of anyone in her family possessing such advanced technique. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei nodded. From the looks of it, this technique doesn't belong to Kikyamin. Someone else must have helped them. After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun's eyes lit up. He turned his head to look at Zhang Meng, and his heart skipped a beat. Could it be that this person had helped Kikyamin? Thinking of this, Han Qingyun hurriedly whispered into Gu Yunfei's ear, at the start of the competition, the Seven Skills sect sent that young man sitting on the spectators' stand, but I chased him away. Now, he is sitting on the spectators' stand. I don't know if he has anything to do with this matter. As he spoke, Han Qingyun signaled Zhang Meng with his eyes. Gu Yunfei followed Han Qingyun's gaze and saw Zhang Meng. Seeing Zhang Meng smiling, Gu Yunfei felt a little suspicious. Could it be that this young man was the culprit? Thinking of this, Gu Yunfei turned his head to look at Han Qingyun and said in a low voice, Go over there now and let this young man sit beside you. By the way, ask him if he was the one who did this. See if you can find out anything. When Han Qingyun heard this, he hurriedly nodded. Don't worry, master. I'll do it right away. Seeing the two of them whispering to each other, Sun Qiao couldn't help but feel resentful. The two of them discussed for a while. Who knew what kind of rotten idea they would come up with? Gu Yunfei and Han Qingyun chatted for a long time before Han Qingyun left the competition venue and returned to the judges' table. As soon as Han Qingyun sat down, he turned to Sun Qiao and smiled. Sect leader's son, what's your relationship with that young man? After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Sun Qiao was stunned. She then asked, What does this have to do with our competition? Sect Master Han, it's better if you don't know. King Han Qingyun shook his head and pointed at Zhang Meng with a smile. Sect leader's son, that's not right. That young man has an impressive appearance. I can tell at a glance that he's no ordinary person. Why don't you let him sit beside me? What do you think? After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Sun Qiao shook her head. No need. He's fine sitting there. Let's continue with the competition. Don't worry about him. Han Qingyun shook his head. That won't do. Sect leader's son, it's not easy to meet such a valiant young hero. How can we not talk? Without waiting for Sun Qiao's reply, Han Qingyun turned to the Tiangongman's disciple and said, Go and invite that young master over. Bring a chair over and place it next to me. Invite this young master to sit beside me. I want to talk to him in detail. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Sun Qiao was taken aback. Her sex competition this time was entirely dependent on Prince Zhang. If Prince Zhang were to do some little tricks over there, no one would notice. Once he came to Han Qingyun's side, Han Qingyun would probably keep an eye on him and prevent Zhang Meng from using his ancestral skills. Thinking of this, Sun Qiao hurriedly waved her hand at the Tiangongman's disciple. "All right, you don't have to go. Just let him sit there." Before Sun Qiao could finish her words, Han Qingyun waved his hand and interrupted her. He said to the Tiangongman's disciple, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and invite him over." Hearing this, the Tiangongman's disciple did not dare to delay. He hurriedly responded and walked towards Zhang Meng. Seeing the Tiangongman's disciple leave, cold sweat broke out on Sun Qiao's forehead. If it wasn't for Zhang Meng's help, they would definitely fail the next test. Thinking of this, Sun Qiao was so anxious that she screamed, "Stop right there! You're not allowed to go!" The Tiangongman's disciple, who went to invite Zhang Meng, was shocked by Sun Qiao's scream. He hurriedly turned around and looked at Han Qingyun, stuttering as if he wanted to say something. Hearing Sun Qiao's scream, Han Qingyun sneered in his heart. He finally understood that all of this was the young man's trick. Since he understood the problem, Han Qingyun could not let Zhang Meng go. Seeing that the Tiangongman's disciple stopped in his tracks, Han Qingyun impatiently waved his hand and said coldly, "Who do you listen to? Hurry up and invite him over. If you can't, I'll hold you accountable." Hearing Han Qingyun's cold words, the Tiangongman's disciple did not dare to stay any longer. He hurriedly turned around and left. Han Qingyun turned around and saw Sun Qiao about to chase after him. He hurriedly waved his hand to stop her and said with a smile, "Leader's son, it's just a small matter. There's no need to trouble you to come over personally. If there's anything you want to say, just tell me." Hearing Han Qingyun's words, Sun Qiao said angrily, "Tell you? What's the use of telling you? I clearly told you not to invite Prince Zhang over. Why didn't you listen?" Han Qingyun smiled and waved his hand. "Leader's son, calm down. I'm doing this for your own good. This Prince Zhang is your friend. I invited him to stay with us. I don't have any ill intentions. Why do you care so much? Hurry up and sit down. The competition is about to begin." At this moment, after hearing Han Qingyun's words, Sun Qiao did not want to bother with him. She was about to stand up and chase after the Tiangongman's disciple when she suddenly heard Yun Jianbai's voice from the side. "Leader's son, it's just changing seat. Moreover, this seat is higher and can see more clearly. Isn't it better to sit here?" After hearing Yun Jianbai's words, Sun Qiao was stunned. This was originally a matter between him and Han Qingyun. She did not understand why Yun Jianbai was speaking up. Sun Qiao indeed did not understand Yun Jianbai's thoughts. However, she did not expect that Yun Jianbai's thoughts were actually the same as Han Qingyun's. Everyone was a master craftsman. Although they did not understand the method of making leather armor, they did not believe that a leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear could display such terrifying defensive power. At this moment, everyone wanted to know how the Tiangongman did it. Although Yun Jianbai did not hear the conversation between Gu Yunfei and Han Qingyun, he only pondered for a moment. After hearing the conversation between Han Qingyun and Sun Qiao, he understood. Could it be that this young man was the key? Although Yun Jianbai did not dare to confirm this matter, in order to explore fate and obtain this super technology, he was willing to do anything. Moreover, Han Qingyun only invited this young man over for a chat. Of course, Yun Jianbai knew that Han Qingyun did not invite this young man over just for a chat. If he could obtain some useful information from their conversation, then this trip would not be in vain. After understanding this point, Yun Jianbai supported Han Qingyun in inviting Zhang Meng over. Chapter 381. After hearing Yun Jianbai's words, Han Qingyun sneered and said, "Sect leader's son, we don't have any bad intentions. We just want to invite Prince Zhang over for a chat. It's fine, right?" Sun Qiaoer said angrily, "Sect leader Han, you think too highly of yourself. You didn't allow Prince Zhang to participate in the competition, so he could only sit in the audience. However, even if he sat in the audience, you're still not satisfied. What do you mean by doing this?" After hearing Sun Qiaoer's words, Han Qingyun waved his hand nonchalantly, "Sect leader's son, we just want to get to know Prince Zhang. It's fine, right?" Actually, while Sun Qiaoer and Han Qingyun were talking, the Tiangongmen disciple had already run to Zhang Meng's side. "Sir, our sect leader would like to invite you to sit over there." Following the direction that Tiangongmen disciple was pointing at, Zhang Meng saw Han Qingyun. Zhang Meng smiled and nodded. Then, he stood up and walked towards the judge's table with the Tiangongmen disciple. At this moment, Sun Qiaoer was still arguing with Han Qingyun. Suddenly, she turned her head and saw Zhang Meng walking over. Sun Qiaoer looked at Zhang Meng in shock and asked in a trembling voice, Why are you here?" Seeing this, Zhang Meng waved his hand. "Sect leader Han invited me. How could I not come? I have to give him face." Sun Qiaoer took a deep breath and calmed her agitated heart. Then she asked, "You're here?" Before Sun Qiaoer could finish, Zhang Meng waved his hand and interrupted her. "It's fine. It's the same wherever I sit. Sect leader's son, don't worry." After saying this, Zhang Meng looked at Sun Qiaoer meaningfully and nodded. Then, he walked in front of Han Qingyun and said with a smile, "Sect leader Han, why did you call me here?" As the deputy leader of a large sect like the Tiangongmen, Han Qingyun still had his own style. Seeing Zhang Meng walk over, Han Qingyun didn't even move from his seat. He waved his hand at Zhang Meng and pointed at the chair beside him. "Sit down. I want to ask you a few questions." Zhang Meng nodded with a smile and sat down. Seeing Zhang Meng sit down, Han Qingyun turned to look at Zhang Meng. Suddenly, he slammed the table and said coldly, "Where did you come from, brat? How can you be so rude? Do you think you can sit beside me?" Hearing Han Qingyun's words, Zhang Meng's smile didn't change. He immediately stood up and carried his chair to the judge's table. Just now, Han Qingyun only wanted to give Zhang Meng a show of strength. He didn't really want him to leave because he still had questions to ask. Seeing that Zhang Meng was about to leave, Han Qingyun slammed the table again and said angrily, "Did I say you could leave?" When Sun Qiaoer saw how rude Han Qingyun was, she was instantly enraged. She stood up and pointed at Han Qingyun, shouting, "Sect leader Han, what is the meaning of this? You better give me an explanation. If you can't explain it clearly, then there's no need to continue this competition." Hearing Sun Qiaoer's words, Han Qingyun sneered, "Sect leader's son, if you dare to withdraw from the competition now, this competition will be considered your loss." Hearing Han Qingyun's words, Sun Qiaoer sneered, "Sect leader Han, you think too highly of yourself. You're not the only one here today. There are so many people in the audience and a few judges. Why don't you ask them if it's my loss if I withdraw from the competition if you're being unreasonable?" Hearing Sun Qiaoer's words, Han Qingyun's expression froze. Although things wouldn't develop to the extent that Sun Qiaoer said, it would still be bad for the Tiangongmen's reputation. Thinking of this, Han Qingyun coughed and said slowly, "Young master, I was a little harsh with my words just now. I don't blame you anymore. Come back and have a seat. I have something to ask you." Hearing this, Zhang Meng shook his head. "I'm sorry, I have nothing to say to you. I'll sit over there." As he spoke, Zhang Meng had already moved his chair to the other side of the judge's table. Seeing that Zhang Meng was ignoring him, Han Qingyun's face turned pale. He tried hard to take a few deep breaths, and his expression softened slightly. Han Qingyun looked at Zhang Meng, who was sitting on the other side of him. He thought for a moment, and whispered a few words to the Tiangongmen disciple beside him. Hearing about Han Qingyun's fate, that disciple of the Heaven's Craftsman sect immediately went to the side and found a few more disciples of the Heaven's Craftsman sect. They all came to Zhang Meng's side and surrounded him tightly. Seeing this, Sun Qiao was really angry. She pointed at Zhang Meng, turned to Fan Yen, and asked loudly, "Master Fan, you're the judge. Let me ask you, are you going to interfere in this kind of thing?" The judge's table was only so big. Fan Yen naturally saw the disciples go over. Then, he saw the disciples surround Zhang Meng. Fan Yen was a little angry. After hearing Sun Qiao's words, Fan Yen suppressed his anger and stood up abruptly. He said to Han Qingyun, "Master Han, since you invited this young master to sit on the stage, why do you have to go overboard and make everyone laugh at you?" Hearing this, Han Qingyun smiled and said nonchalantly, "Prince Zhang is my guest. Naturally, I have to protect his safety. Is it wrong for me to send people to protect him?" At this point, Han Qingyun turned to look at Sun Qiao and said with a smile, "This Prince Zhang doesn't know martial arts at first glance. My master's martial arts are so high. When he attacks later, if the aftershocks hurt Prince Zhang, wouldn't that be bad?" Fan Yen was at a loss for words when he heard Han Qingyun say that it was to protect Zhang Meng. He couldn't find the words to object. Just now, when Gu Yunfei attacked, sand and stones flew everywhere. Even Sun Qiao was hit in the face by small grains of sand. At this moment, Han Qingyun said that the disciples were protecting Zhang Meng. Although he knew that it was sophistry, he couldn't do anything about it. Seeing that Zhang Meng was completely blocked, Sun Qiao began to worry. She didn't know how Zhang Meng's skill was activated. Naturally, she didn't know where these people were standing and whether they would block Zhang Meng's path. At this moment, Zhang Meng was looking at the path in front of him. Even Sun Qiao couldn't see Zhang Meng because she was blocked by those people. Sun Qiao was about to say something when Fan Yan's voice suddenly sounded in her ear. "Master Sun, it's better not to say anything. Senior Go has already started." Hearing Fan Yan's words, Sun Qiao was shocked. She turned her head and saw that Gu Yunfei had already taken the saber from Han Yuchao and was walking towards the leather armor. Sun Qiao didn't know what Han Qingyun and Gu Yunfei were discussing. The only thing she was sure of was that Han Qingyun and Gu Yunfei must have come up with a new plan. Seeing Gu Yunfei getting closer and closer, Sun Qiao's heart rose again. Chapter 382. The competition continued. Gu Yunfei held his level 17 sword and walked to Kikiaman's equipment. Looking at the unscathed surface of the leather armor, he tightened his grip on the sword. Gu Yunfei stood in place and adjusted his breathing. When he felt that he was ready, his eyes suddenly narrowed. In an instant, the dust around him flew up and covered him again. In the dust, Gu Yunfei used all his strength again. The sword in his hand left a long red trail behind it and slashed towards the leather armor in front of him. Triple wave. Gu Yunfei was screaming madly in his heart, "Break! Break!" After Gu Yunfei's roar, the sword in his hand suddenly turned into a shadow and slashed at the leather armor like lightning. The people in the field only heard a muffled sound. Everyone was really uneasy. Even the ground trembled slightly. After this muffled sound, the smoke and dust seemed to explode and spread out in all directions. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sound of small pebbles breaking through the air was constantly heard, flying in all directions. This time, Gu Yunfei's strength was too strong. The pebbles were like countless hidden weapons, and the pebbles were sent flying in all directions. "Ah! It hurts. Ouch! Oh no, it hit my face." On the competition stage, only Gu Yunfei's area was covered in dust, but after his attack, the dust around him was completely blown away by the powerful force. The area around Gu Yunfei and the leather armor was completely clear, without the slightest bit of dust. The dust on the ground and in the air was blown away in all directions. The judges' table and the audience's stand were filled with dust, and for a moment, it actually blocked the audience's vision. Everyone could only hear someone beside them being hit by a pebble. Wailing sounds could be heard everywhere. After a while, the pebbles flew away and the dust in the air gradually dispersed. Only then did the audience see the situation on the competition stage clearly. On the competition stage, Gu Yunfei stared blankly at the leather armor in front of him, his mind blank. Just now, he had already used his strongest strength and skill, but he was still unable to cause any damage to the leather armor. Gu Yunfei had an absurd thought in his mind. The leather armor in front of him was just an illusion. That was why he couldn't break through its defense. Han Qingyun looked at the situation on the competition stage. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead and his heart gradually sank. Level 17 attacks were ineffective. What should he do? The next attack would be a level 18 attack. After dripping spiritual water on his equipment, he estimated that it should be between level 18 and 19. Now that he was level 17, wouldn't the next attack be a dangerous period? Han Qingyun turned his head with difficulty and waved his hand to call the disciples surrounding Zhang Meng over. Unexpectedly, the Tiangongmen disciple looked troubled. He pointed to the other side. And said, "Master, they're all injured. They're all injured." What? Hearing this, Han Qingyun stood up abruptly and looked in the direction of Zhang Meng. As expected, there's only Zhang Meng sitting there. The disciples of the Heavens Craftsman School he sent over have all disappeared. Seeing this, Han Qingyun gritted his teeth and whispered to the Tiangongmen disciple beside him, "Call the injured disciples over. I have something to ask them." Hearing Han Qingyun's order, the Tiangongmen disciple didn't dare to delay. He quickly responded and walked to the back. Not long after, the Tiangongmen disciple led a few injured Tiangongmen disciples over. "Greetings, Vice Sect Master." After the disciples greeted him, Han Qingyun asked in a low voice, "Was it Prince Zhang who injured you?" Hearing this, one of the injured Tiangongmen disciple quickly waved his hand. "No, it was Second Elder who was too strong. The pebbles he threw injured us." Hearing this Tiangongmen disciple's answer, Han Qingyun frowned and asked in a low voice, "Really? You're not lying to me?" That Tiangongmen disciple hurriedly cupped his fists and replied, "How would I dare to lie to you, Vice Sect Master? If you don't believe me, you can ask them." Hearing this Tiangongmen disciple's answer, Han Qingyun was a little annoyed. Just as he was about to ask again, Sun Qiao suddenly laughed coldly and said, "Sect Master Han, do you think that Prince Zhang was the one who injured your subordinates?" Hearing this, Han Qingyun laughed coldly and said, "So what? Even if I suspect you, so what? Out of so many people, why are my subordinates the only ones injured while the others are fine? Sect Leader Sun, can you tell me the reason for this?" Hearing this, Sun Qiao laughed and said, "What other reason could there be? Of course it's because they were unlucky." Hearing Sun Qiao's words, Han Qingyun was about to say something when Fan Yen suddenly said, "Sect Master Han, I don't think this was done by Prince Zhang. Look." As he spoke, Fan Yen opened his palm for Han Qingyun to see. In Fan Yen's palm there was a pea-sized pebble. "Sect Master Han, under Senior Ji's terrifying strength, if this pebble hit someone else, there would be injuries. Even I felt pain in my palm when I caught this pebble, not to mention others. As for your subordinates, perhaps they were really unlucky and were hit by a few larger pebbles. That's why they were injured." Seeing that Fan Yen was defending Sun Qiao, Han Qingyun couldn't say anything more. He thought for a while and gave a few more orders to the Tiangongmen disciples beside him. Hearing Han Qingyun's orders, the Tiangongmen disciples walked towards Zhang Meng again. Seeing that the disciples had walked to Zhang Meng's side and surrounded Zhang Meng again, Han Qingyun retracted his gaze and turned his attention back to the leather armor. Next would be a level 18 attack. Han Qingyun was thinking about what to do next. Although his master's attack was powerful, it still couldn't break through the leather armor's defense. What should he do? Han Qingyun had a headache. Han Qingyun wasn't sure about the effect of the spirit water. Whether his equipment could withstand a level 18 attack was still uncertain. If this equipment made of deep-sea cold iron and adamantine was destroyed by a level 18 attack, then he would lose this competition completely. What should he do? A level 17 sword, his master's all-out attack, and his master's ultimate skill still couldn't break through the leather armor's defense. Next, a level 18 sword, his master's all-out attack, and his master's ultimate skill still couldn't break through the leather armor's defense in Han Qingyun's opinion. Since he couldn't break through the opponent's leather armor's defense, then he would lose this competition. Chapter 383. If a level 18 attack still couldn't break through the defense of the opponent's leather armor, wouldn't they lose this match? Han Qingyun wasn't sure if that piece of equipment made of deep-sea frosty iron and adamantine could withstand a level 18 attack. He had been making equipment for decades and had made countless pieces of equipment, but he had never made one before. It could be said that there were very few pieces of equipment that could withstand a level 18 attack. What should he do? Han Qingyun only felt a splitting headache. He didn't feel confident using the deep-sea frosty iron, so he added adamantine to the deep-sea frosty iron. He thought that victory was in his hands, but he didn't expect to still be at a disadvantage. It didn't matter. The Tiangongmen were rich, so he would add some spiritual water to increase the defense of this piece of equipment. Han Qingyun only wanted to win. However, after spending so much effort and wasting so many resources, he was still on the verge of losing this match. Han Qingyun's eyes kept darting around as he quickly thought about what to do next to win this match. Looking at the competition ground and seeing Gu Yunfei standing there in a daze, Han Qingyun's eyes suddenly lit up. Now that things had come to this, he could only use this method. Thinking of this, Han Qingyun hurriedly stood up and walked towards Gu Yunfei again. At this moment, Gu Yunfei looked at the leather armor in front of him and didn't know what to do. He had used his strongest strength, a level 17 sword, and his ultimate skill, but he still couldn't break through the defense of this leather armor. What should he do? Most importantly, Gu Yunfei had already heard the people in front of the audience start to talk about him. This made Gu Yunfei blush. As the second elder of the Tiangongmen, in this kind of situation, he should have broken the opponent's leather armor with one blow and then enjoyed the admiration of the crowd. However, now that he had used all his skills, he still couldn't do anything to this leather armor. If he had known that this would be the outcome, Gu Yunfei definitely wouldn't have come. The reputation and prestige that he had painstakingly built up over the years had been completely wasted in this short period of time. Not only that, it seemed like he had become a laughingstock. Gu Yunfei only felt a nameless fire burning in his heart that made him feel uncomfortable. Seeing that Han Qingyun was here again, Gu Yunfei did not say a word. He went up and gave him 2 slaps to appease the anger in his heart. The 2 slaps forced Han Qingyun to take 2 steps back before he could regain his balance. Although Han Qingyun knew that Gu Yunfei was angry, there was nothing she could do. She could only cover her face and come before Gu Yunfei. "Master, you should calm down first. Now is not the time to be angry. We should think of a way to win this competition as soon as possible. After this competition, even if Master wants to beat this disciple to death, this disciple won't dare to resist." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei let out a long sigh. "Now that things have come to this, I have no other ideas. As you can see, my full-strength attack just now was unable to break through the defense of this armor. I really have no other ideas." Speaking of this, Gu Yunfei's tone paused. He suddenly remembered something and asked, "By the way, didn't you just say that there was something wrong with that young man? Did you find out anything?" Han Qin-yun shook her head. "No, I didn't find out anything." At this point, Han Qin-yun turned his head and glanced at Zhang Meng, who was surrounded by the disciples of the Heavens Craftsman faction, before continuing, "I've already ordered people to surround that person, but it still didn't work." After hearing Han Qin-yun's answer, Gu Yunfei frowned and said, "So this matter has nothing to do with him?" Hearing this, Han Qin-yun shook her head. "I don't know either, but I think that Kikyaman would never be able to make such a heaven-defying equipment. They could only make such equipment with the help of outsiders. During this period of time, other than this Prince Zhang who is an outsider, there is no other outsider who could possibly help Kikyaman." After hearing Han Qin-yun's words, Gu Yunfei frowned and asked, "Do you mean that the problem still lies with this kid?" Hearing Gu Yunfei's question, Han Qin-yun nodded. "Other than this, I really can't think of any other possibility." Speaking of this, Han Qin-yun could not help but frown. She pondered for a moment before continuing, "But how did he do it?" Han Qin-yun turned to look at Gu Yunfei and asked with some doubt, "Master, you have seen it before. Have you heard of such a magical skill?" After hearing Han Qin-yun's words, Gu Yunfei could not help but squint his eyes. After thinking carefully for a moment, he shook his head. "No, I have never heard of a skill that can increase the defensive power of equipment." Hearing this, Han Qin-yun nodded. "I see. But how did he do it? How could he make such a big change in a piece of leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear?" At this point, Han Qin-yun's eyes suddenly lit up. He abruptly turned his head to look at Gu Yunfei and asked, "Master, do you think this person has something like spirit water? As long as this item is placed on the leather armor, it can increase the defense of the leather armor." After hearing Han Qin-yun's words, Gu Yunfei nodded. "What you said makes sense. Although I've never heard of such a thing, I'm guessing that this leather armor should be made in this way. Otherwise, just relying on the quality of a wild bear's leather armor would definitely not be able to achieve such a defense." Hearing this, Han Qin-yun said with some surprise, "Could it be that such a treasure really exists?" Gu Yunfei sighed, "There should be. Even something as miraculous as the spirit water can be found. Others should also have something similar." After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qin-yun nodded. After a moment of silence, she said, "The problem now is, even if we know that they use such an item, how much can it increase the defense of the equipment? Could it be that this item has a stronger effect than spirit water?" Speaking of this, a trace of greed appeared in Han Qin-yun's eyes. "Master, if we can obtain such an item, then wouldn't it be?" After hearing Han Qin-yun's words, Gu Yunfei's heart also thumped wildly. If his guess was right, there really was such a treasure in this world. If he could obtain this treasure, thinking of this item that could make a wild bear's skin into such a heaven-defying piece of equipment, Gu Yunfei felt his hands tremble slightly. Tiangongmen's spirit water was already a rare treasure. However, compared to such a treasure, it was simply trash. If he could obtain such a treasure and make such a heaven-defying piece of equipment, just thinking about it made him yearn for it. Gu Yunfei turned to look at Han Qin-yun and found that Han Qin-yun's eyes were also filled with excitement. Chapter 384. Gu Yunfei said, "If there really is such an item, we must get it." At this point, Gu Yunfei's eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. "No matter what price we have to pay, we must obtain this item." After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qin-yun nodded. "Master, don't worry. I know what to do." After hearing Han Qin-yun's answer, Gu Yunfei nodded. "Then what do you plan to do next?" Han Qin-yun thought for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, "No matter what, we must win this competition. Otherwise, it won't be so easy to take over those small sections. They might run over to Kikyaman and go against us." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei frowned. I'm afraid it won't be easy to win this competition. I used a level 17 sword to attack that leather armor, but you saw the result. It didn't work. If that's the case, even if I use a level 18 sword to attack that leather armor, I might not be able to break through its defense. At this point, Gu Yunfei turned his head and glanced at the equipment made of deep-sea cold iron and fine gold before continuing. However, although our equipment is made of spirit water, there is a gap of 5 levels between level 13 and level 18. This means that our equipment might not be able to withstand a level 18 attack. If the defense of our equipment is broken, and the leather armor's defense is still intact, won't we lose? After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun cupped his fists and bowed to Gu Yunfei. He then lowered his voice and said, Master, I came across an item by chance. It's called the Spirit Enhancing Pill. Have you heard of it? Spirit Enhancing Pill. After hearing this name, Gu Yunfei was shocked. He pointed at Han Qingyun and said angrily, You unfilial bastard. Do you want me to eat the Spirit Enhancing Pill? After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun hurriedly cupped his fists and said, Master, I have no choice. The Spirit Enhancing Pill, after eating one, could immediately double a person's strength. Most importantly, the effect of the Spirit Enhancing Pill was so strong that it could be stacked. After eating one Spirit Enhancing Pill, one's strength would double. If he ate 2 Spirit Boosting Pills, his strength would increase by 2 times. The effect of the Spirit Enhancing Pill could be stacked up to 5 times. In other words, it could increase one's strength by 5 times. After eating the Spirit Boosting Pill, the effect would last for about an hour. The effect of the Spirit Enhancing Pill was powerful, so it was naturally incomparably precious. Even if one had the money, they might not be able to buy it. However, although the effect of the Spirit Enhancing Pill was very strong, it had a flaw. The main purpose of the Spirit Boosting Pill was to stimulate a person's potential within a short period of time. Only then could it double one's strength. The after effects of doubling one's strength were also quite serious. Every time he ate a Spirit Boosting Pill, his vitality would be greatly damaged. At the very least, it would reduce his lifespan by 2 years. If he ate 5 Spirit Enhancing Pills, no matter how many enemies he defeated, 10 years of his lifespan would be gone. Therefore, although most people knew that the Spirit Enhancing Pill could increase one's strength, not many people dared to eat it. Gu Yunfei looked at Han Qingyun in shock and said angrily, Do you know what the Spirit Boosting Pill is? Do you know what the after effects of eating the Spirit Boosting Pill are? After hearing Gu Yunfei's question, Han Qingyun nodded silently, then knelt on the ground and said with a trembling voice, Master, I know. I know what the after effects of eating the Spirit Boosting Pill are. However, this disciple had no other choice. The Heavens Craftsman faction had to win this competition. Only by winning could the Heavens Craftsman faction smoothly annex those small factions and make the Heavens Craftsman faction bigger and stronger. But, if we lose, not only will the Tiangongmen not be able to become stronger, we might not even be able to keep our current glory. Hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei was unable to restrain his anger. He went forward and kicked Han Qingyun, causing him to roll on the ground a few times before he could stabilize himself. You, for your own personal gain, you didn't hesitate to make your master eat such a harmful pill. You, I hate you, how could I have taught such an unfilial disciple like you? Hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun hurriedly crawled back and said with a trembling voice, Master, I don't want to either. If I was strong enough, I definitely wouldn't let you eat the Spirit Boosting Pill. But I'm weak. Even if I ate 5 Spirit Boosting Pills, it wouldn't have any effect. Saying this, Han Qingyun kowtowed to Gu Yunfei, then continued, Master, for the Tiangongmen to be able to become stronger, I wouldn't hesitate to give up my life. As long as we win this competition, even if you kill me immediately after we go back, I won't complain at all. Master, I have no choice. For the sake of the Tiangongmen, I beg you, Master, to accept my request. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei was so angry that he raised his hand and was about to kill Han Qingyun. But his hand fell on Han Qingyun's head, and could not go any further. Seeing that his master was about to kill him, Han Qingyun was so scared that he trembled. Just as he was about to run away, he saw Gu Yunfei's hand stop on his head, and did not continue to hit him. Han Qingyun hurriedly raised his head and saw that Gu Yunfei's face was already covered in tears. Seeing Gu Yunfei like this, Han Qingyun's tears also flowed down. Master, even if you beat me to death, I won't have the slightest complaint. I only hope that Master will take this spirit-boosting pill for the sake of the Heaven's Craftsman faction's reputation. Then I can die without complaint. After saying this, Han Qingyun raised his head and closed his eyes, waiting for Gu Yunfei to deal with him. Seeing Han Qingyun like this, Gu Yunfei's hand stopped in midair and slowly started to tremble. After a while, Gu Yunfei slowly retracted his hand and suddenly sighed. He muttered to himself, "For the sake of the Tiangongmen, I'll spare your life for now." Saying this, Gu Yunfei's voice paused for a while before he continued with a sad tone. "Where's the spirit-boosting pill? Give it to me. For the sake of the Tiangongmen, it doesn't matter if I lose a few years of my life." Speaking of this, Gu Yunfei's old tears flowed down his cheek. He was already very old and didn't have many years left to live. But now, he had to eat the spirit-enhancing pill and reduce his lifespan. How could he not cry bitterly? After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun was immediately overjoyed. He quickly stood up and said, "Master, please wait for a moment. I'll send someone to get it." After saying this, Han Qingyun waved at Han Yuchao. When Han Yuchao came in front of him, he leaned over and whispered a few words in his ear. After hearing Han Qingyun's instructions, Han Yuchao did not dare to delay. He hurriedly responded and turned to run out of the field. For such a precious medicine, naturally, he would not be at ease letting an outsider take it. Chapter 385. Gu Yunfei took the bottle of medicine that Han Yuchao handed over. Not only did he feel sorrow in his heart, his tears once again flowed down. Kikyaman's leather armor, which was made from the skin of a wild bear, had pushed him to this point. Sigh. Gu Yunfei let out a long sigh and took out a pill from the bottle. He threw it into his mouth and swallowed it. Seeing that Gu Yunfei had only taken one pill and closed the bottle cap, Han Qingyun felt a little dissatisfied. For Kikyaman's honor, his master should have taken 5 pills in a row. However, Han Qingyun couldn't go up and say this. He could only pray that Gu Yunfei, who had doubled his strength, would be able to break the leather armor. As the 8th disciple of the Medicine King Pavilion, Fan Yen had already recognized what medicine Gu Yunfei had taken the moment he had swallowed it. It was a spirit-enhancing pill. Fan Yen knew very well what a spirit-enhancing pill could do. Anyone who took a spirit-enhancing pill would have their strength doubled. Although the effects of the spirit-enhancing pill were powerful, the side effects were also quite severe. That's right, each spirit-enhancing pill could take away 2 years of your life. Seeing Gu Yunfei take the pill with tears streaming down his face, Fan Yen couldn't help but sigh. At this point in the competition, Fan Yen knew very well why Gu Yunfei had taken the pill. Kikyaman's leather armor, which was made from the skin of a wild bear, had incredible defense. Even a level 17 sword and Gu Yunfei's all-out attack couldn't break through the armor's defense. Looking at the bottle in Gu Yunfei's hand, Fan Yen knew that the Tiangongmen had no other choice. Otherwise, Gu Yunfei wouldn't have taken the spirit-enhancing pill. Fan Yen recognized the spirit-enhancing pill, but Sun Qiaoer, who was from a small sect, didn't. She looked at Gu Yunfei for a while, then turned to Fan Yen. "Master Fan, may I ask what pill Gu Yunfei took?" Hearing Sun Qiaoer's question, Fan Yen was stunned. He didn't know if he should answer it. After a long while, Fan Yin turned his head to look at Han Qingyun. Seeing that Han Qingyun was not looking in his direction, he lowered his voice and spoke slowly. Sect Master Sun, if I'm not wrong, Senior Gu ate a spirit-enhancing pill. Spirit-enhancing pill. Sun Qiao repeated the name. Suddenly, her eyes widened and she stared at Gu Yunfei. After a long while, she turned to Fan Yin and asked in a low voice, Brother Fan, what about you? Master Fan, the spirit-boosting pill you mentioned, is it the kind of pill that can increase one's strength? Hearing Sun Qiao's question, Midnight nodded silently. Seeing Fan Yin nod, Sun Qiao immediately covered her mouth in surprise. She looked around and asked in a low voice, I've heard that although the spirit-enhancing pill can increase a person's strength, it can also cause a person's vitality to be greatly damaged. It can even reduce one's lifespan. I wonder if it's true. Hearing Sun Qiao's question, Fan Yin sighed. Of course it's true. This pill stimulates a person's potential. It's a combination of highly toxic substances. If a person eats it, their vitality will be greatly damaged and their lifespan will be shortened. Hearing Fan Yin's words, Sun Qiao asked in surprise. If that's the case, then why did he eat it? Speaking up to this point, Sun Qiao stopped and didn't ask any more questions. Because she already knew why Gu Yunfei ate a pill that could shorten a person's lifespan. Sun Qiao sighed in her heart when she understood the reason for the matter. For this competition, Prince Zhang didn't hesitate to sacrifice 3 years of his lifespan to use his ancestral technique to help him win this competition. Now Gu Yunfei ate a spirit-enhancing pill to defeat Kikyaman. Sun Qiao was speechless. She didn't understand why this was happening. Originally, the Tiangongmen and Kikyaman didn't interfere with each other. The Tiangongmen made their metal equipment while Kikyaman sewed their leather armor. Everyone lived in harmony. However, because the Tiangongmen wanted to take over Kikyaman, they ended up eating random pills. Sigh. Sun Qiao could only sigh deeply at this situation. Hearing Sun Qiao sigh, Pan Qingyun felt very uncomfortable. Just now, Fan Yin and Sun Qiao were whispering. Although he couldn't hear what they were saying, he knew very well what they were talking about. Gu Yunfei was the most conspicuous person in the competition. Everyone probably saw how he ate the pill just now. As a master pharmacist, it wasn't strange that Fan Yin knew about the pill. It was even more strange that Sun Qiao asked him about it. However, in Han Qingyun's eyes, this was like a slap to his face. In the competition between the huge Tiangongmen and the small Kikyaman, not only did the Tiangongmen's second elder have to be sent out, they even had to rely on pills to increase their strength. If news of this spread, they would definitely become the laughingstock of others. Han Qingyun knew this very well, but he had no other choice. At this point, he could only win this competition and use reality to slap everyone in the face. Although everyone would laugh at the Tiangongmen, so what? Let everyone know the Tiangongmen's strength and the Tiangongmen's determination. There was nothing wrong with this. Just as Han Qingyun was thinking about how to subdue these small sects after winning this competition, Sun Qiao, who was beside him, suddenly turned her head and said, "Don't worry. Sect Leader Han, I see that this competition is going to be very difficult. Why don't we stop the competition?" Hearing Sun Qiao's words, Han Qingyun only felt his face burning. An unknown anger suddenly rose in his heart. He turned to look at Sun Qiao and said coldly, "Sect Leader Sun, do you not dare to continue? Or do you want to admit defeat?" Hearing Han Qingyun's words, Sun Qiao was stunned. She quickly said, "Sect Leader Han, this competition has already caused both sides to suffer. If we continue, I'm afraid the losses will be even greater. If we shake hands and make peace now, it's still not too late." To be honest, when Sun Qiao said this, she really did not have any bad intentions. She just saw that Gu Yunfei was already so old, Yet he still had to take that kind of medicine that would shorten his life. She could not bear it in her heart, so she wanted to cancel the competition and make peace. Who knew that not only did Han Qingyun not appreciate her kindness, he even took the initiative to provoke her. Han Qingyun's actions made Sun Qiao's heart turn cold. Sun Qiao looked at Gu Yunfei in the competition arena and said softly, "Sect leader Han, don't you think that winning this competition is too much?" Hearing Sun Qiao's words, Han Qingyun shook his head and said lightly, "As long as I can win this competition, I'm willing to pay any price." After hearing Han Qingyun's answer, Sun Qiao shook her head helplessly. "All right then. If you're willing to pay the price, then I have no choice but to continue the competition." Han Qingyun laughed coldly. "Sect leader son, don't think that Kikyaman can win this competition just because its leather armor can withstand a level 17 attack. Let me tell you that's impossible. Your Kikyaman will never win." Chapter 386. Seeing that Han Qingyun was about to go berserk, Sun Qiao ignored him and turned to look at Zhang Meng. She saw that Zhang Meng was still surrounded by those people. He couldn't even watch the match. Seeing this, Sun Qiao sighed. In order to win this match, the Tiangongman Gu Yunfei didn't hesitate to take the pill that would shorten his lifespan. On the other hand, in order to win, Prince Zhang didn't hesitate to sacrifice 3 years of his lifespan to use his mysterious ancestral skill. What was the point of all this? The match continued. Gu Yunfei calmed himself down and slowly took the level 18 saber from Han Yuchao. He walked towards Kikyaman's leather armor. When he reached Kikyaman's leather armor, Gu Yunfei started to circulate his true qi. As soon as his true qi started to circulate, Gu Yunfei felt something different. The surging immortal true qi flowed through his body like a raging sea. Gu Yunfei was shocked. He began to silently chant the mysterious art. This surge of true qi was transferred to his whole body. Finally, it erupted around his body. It rolled up a large amount of dust and once again shrouded Gu Yunfei's body. Sand and dust danced in the air, circling around Gu Yunfei endlessly. In the dust, Gu Yunfei circulated his true qi to his hands. In an instant, the saber in Gu Yunfei's hand glowed brightly at the tip of the saber. Gu Yunfei looked at the gleam on the tip of the saber and sighed in his heart. Before he took the pill, the gleam on the tip of the saber was red. It was a faint red. But now it was different. The gleam on the tip of the saber was brighter and brighter. Gu Yunfei let his body quickly move around. Feeling this powerful true qi, Gu Yunfei suddenly roared towards the sky. "Break!" Following his roar, Gu Yunfei's saber slashed towards the leather armor in front of him. When Gu Yunfei chopped down with his saber, the dust in the air suddenly stopped. Following a muffled sound, the dust in the air once again erupted in all directions. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At the moment of the eruption of smoke and dust, countless small air-piercing sounds rang in everyone's ears. Everyone was so shocked that they hurriedly hid under the table. Everyone was hiding under the table. They felt the vibrations coming from the table and heard the sound of dust hitting the table. They couldn't help but be shocked. Gu Yunfei's attack this time was so violent that even Sun Qiao was no exception. Seeing that the situation was not right, she lowered her body and hid under the table. As time passed, screams could be heard all around. Sun Qiao was overwhelmed with shock. She never thought that after Gu Yunfei ate the spirit-enhancing pill, the effects would be so obvious. The attack this time was clearly much stronger than the previous one. Last time, when the sand from the dust hit his face, he only felt pain. This time, through the vibration of the table, Sun Qiao was sure that if she was hit by the sand brought by the dust, she would definitely be injured. The process of dust flying everywhere actually only took a very short time. A moment later, Sun Qiao could no longer hear the sound of sand flying past. Seeing that there was no more sand flying past, Sun Xiaoer was about to crawl out of the table when she heard Gu Yunfei's sorrowful shout from the arena. How is this possible? Why hasn't it broken yet? Hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Sun Xiaoer's nervous heart instantly relaxed. She knew that her leather armor had withstood a level 18 attack again. Sun Xiaoer sat back down in her seat and looked at Gu Yunfei, who was in a daze. She was not only relieved, but also shocked. Although the testing knife was a level 18 knife, with Gu Yunfei's terrifying strength, it was not as simple as level 18. In addition to the spirit-enhancing pill that Gu Yunfei had just eaten, he had probably passed the level 20 test. Thinking of level 20, Sun Xiaoer only felt her heart beat faster. Ever since Sun Xiaoer started crafting equipment, she had come into contact with many pieces of equipment. What kind of equipment could withstand a level 20 attack? Sun Xiaoer had never even thought about this question. For leather armor, being able to withstand a level 10 attack was already considered quite strong. But now this leather armor had actually withstood a level 20 attack. Sun Xiaoer did not expect that Zhang Meng's family's ultimate skill would be so terrifying. If anyone could wear this kind of armor, even an expert like Gu Yunfei would not be able to do anything to them. Gu Yunfei looked at the leather armor in front of him that was still intact after being attacked violently. He felt like crying. He had used all his strength, but still could not break the defense of this leather armor. In order to restore the reputation of the Tiangongmen, he did not hesitate to reduce his lifespan by 2 years and eat the spirit-enhancing pill that was both loved and hated. But still, the defense of this leather armor was not broken. How could this be? How could the defense of this leather armor be so strong? Could it be that he had to eat 5 spirit-enhancing pills for it to break? 5 spirit-enhancing pills would reduce his lifespan by 10 years. Thinking of 10 years of lifespan, Gu Yunfei's tears fell again. No, I can't eat anymore. I've already reduced my lifespan by 2 years. If I eat 4 more pills, I'll be in trouble. 10 years of lifespan. How many 10 years does a person have in their lifetime? No, I haven't enjoyed enough in this world. With these 10 years, I'll be able to enjoy a lot of good food and wine. Thinking of this, Gu Yunfei made up his mind. This time, he would definitely not eat any more pills. Seeing that Kikiamen's leather armor was still intact, Han Qingyun's heart sank. The Tiangongmen's armor had withstood a level 18 attack. Now, it was his turn to face the challenge of a level 18 attack. To be honest, Han Qingyun was not confident that his armor could withstand a level 18 attack. The original plan was that the armor could withstand a level 13 attack. After being strengthened by the spiritual water, Han Qingyun estimated that it could withstand a level 18 attack at most. Han Qingyun didn't dare blink his eyes as he watched the female Kikiamen disciple, afraid that he would miss out on any details. As the female Kikiamen disciple raised the level 18 blade higher and higher, Han Qingyun's heart started to beat faster and faster. Han Qingyun didn't even dare breathe loudly, as he was afraid that he would increase the power of the level 18 blade. As he watched the level 18 blade rise above his head, Han Qingyun suddenly felt an urge to shout for it to stop. Han Qingyun was really scared. The moment the blade was chopped down would be the most crucial moment. If the blade destroyed the armor, the Tiangongmen's reputation would be completely ruined. If the Tiangongmen's reputation was ruined, it wouldn't matter. They could slowly rebuild it. However, Han Qingyun's position as the deputy sect master would really come to an end. Han Qingyun was certain that many precious materials had been used for this competition. Even the sect's most precious spiritual water had been used. Chapter 387. For this competition, Han Qingyun had already used his limited amount of deep-sea cold iron, precious gold essence, and priceless spirit water. If he still failed after using so many precious materials, Han Qingyun was sure that if he failed, He would only be able to hold on to his position as the vice-sect leader for 2 more days before he was fired. After working so hard for so many years, how could Han Qingyun be willing to give up this position? Why did Han Qingyun organize this competition? It was because he wanted to challenge for the position of sect leader. If he succeeded, he would be able to take in a large number of smaller sects and expand the strength of the Tiangongmen. This would be equivalent to expanding the Tiangongmen's power by a lot. With this kind of contribution, Han Qingyun believed that the position of sect leader would be his sooner or later. But now, an unknown Kikyaman had actually chased him to this extent. The female disciple of the Heavens Craftsman sect slowly raised the level 18 saber above her head. When she reached the highest point, she looked at the equipment of the Heavens Craftsman sect in front of her and suddenly widened her eyes. With a loud roar, she used all her strength to draw a semicircle in the air with the saber she had raised above her head and hacked at the equipment. Ding! The female Tiangongman disciple retracted her sword and looked at the equipment. When she saw it clearly, she was overjoyed. Sect leader, I've created another mark. I've created another mark on the Tiangongman's equipment. Haha! Looking at the female Tiangongman disciple, who was laughing at the sky, Sun Qiao's eyes lit up. This time, she had created a mark on the Tiangongman's equipment. Then, she would most likely be able to break through the equipment's defense next time. Thinking of this, Sun Qiao took out her handkerchief and wiped the sweat from her forehead due to her nervousness. A smile appeared on her face. Smelling the fragrance on Sun Qiao's handkerchief, and seeing the smile on her face, Han Qingyun suddenly felt like he was being mocked. Although Sun Qiao wasn't looking at him, Han Qingyun had this feeling. Sun Qiao was mocking him. Mocking his incompetence, mocking him for being blind, mocking him for overestimating himself. Seeing the smile on Sun Qiao's face, Han Qingyun suddenly slammed the table and said coldly, "You want to defeat me? Don't even think about it." After saying this, Han Qingyun suddenly stood up and walked towards Gu Yunfei. Sun Qiao was a little confused as she watched Han Qingyun leave her seat. She knew that Han Qingyun had gone to find Gu Yunfei to discuss a solution. But now that things had come to this, what good solution could they come up with? Seeing Han Qingyun walking over, Gu Yunfei no longer had any thoughts of beating him up. That was because it was already meaningless. At this point, Gu Yunfei already couldn't think of any way to break through the leather armor's defense. As for the problem of taking medicine, Gu Yunfei had already thought it through. He absolutely could not take it anymore. It was better for him to enjoy the 10 years than to waste it here. Gu Yunfei had even planned that as long as he left this place, he would immediately travel around and enjoy these wonderful 10 years. Han Qingyun came in front of Gu Yunfei. Without saying anything, he first knelt down and kowtowed 3 times, saying sincerely, "Master, you are willing to take the spirit-boosting pill for the sake of the Tiangongmen's reputation. Your disciple's heart is filled with admiration. I can't wait to take the spirit-boosting pill for you as a disciple to repay your kindness in teaching me." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei stretched out his hand and helped him up. He sighed, "Qingyun, I think we should forget about this competition. That leather armor is too strange. In my opinion, to break through the defense of that leather armor is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. In my opinion, why don't we have a good talk with sect leader Sun about this competition? Why don't we call it a draw? This way our sect's treasure, the Heaven and Earth Cauldron, won't be lost to Kikyaman as a prize. If we do this, our losses won't be too great. Although we'll waste a few drops of spirit water, I'll speak up for you. Don't take it to heart." As soon as Gu Yunfei finished speaking, Han Qingyun hurriedly said, "Master, you mustn't do that. If we say we want to call it a draw now and outsiders find out, they'll laugh at us. They'll think that we Tiangongmen are afraid of Kikyaman. Master, you mustn't do this. You mustn't make peace." When Gu Yunfei heard this, he sighed. "It's not that I want to make peace. It's just that we really have no way of breaking through Kikyaman's leather armor's defense. After hearing Gu Yunfei's answer, Han Qingyun hesitated for a moment before probing, Master, how many spirit-boosting pills did you take just now? When Gu Yunfei heard this, he raised a finger and sighed, I took one spirit-boosting pill just now. Unfortunately, it didn't work. I still couldn't break through the leather armor's defense. After hearing Gu Yunfei's answer, Han Qingyun gritted his teeth and said softly, Master, I think you should take all of them. Then you'll be able to increase your strength by 5 times. You should be able to. Before Han Qingyun could finish speaking, Gu Yunfei slapped him 2 to 3 meters away. Gu Yunfei quickly walked in front of Han Qingyun, grabbed him by his clothes, and lifted him up. He said angrily, Han Qingyun, do you know that eating 5 spirit-enhancing pills will reduce your lifespan by 10 years? Open your dog eyes and see how many years your master has left to live. When he heard his master's words, Han Qingyun was shocked. If Gu Yunfei didn't take the pills, with his current strength, he definitely wouldn't be able to break through the leather armor. Thinking of this, Han Qingyun hurriedly squeezed out a few drops of tears and said with a choked voice, Master, I shouldn't have made such an unreasonable request. However, I have no other choice. For the sake of the Tiangongman's reputation, I'm willing to go through fire and water for the Tiangongman. Even if I die, I won't regret it. If I was strong enough, I definitely wouldn't ask you to take these pills. However, I'm not strong enough. Even if I took all these pills, I'm afraid I won't be able to catch up to your current strength. It would be a waste of these pills. Master, you've seen that most of the small sects are supporting Kikyaman. If we lose this time, not only will the Tiangongmen not be able to increase their strength, I'm afraid that the Tiangongmen's original disciples will become restless. I'm afraid that they'll leave the Tiangongmen and join Kikyaman. When that happens, you and I will become the sinners of the Tiangongmen. We'll never be able to raise our heads again. If the Tiangongmen continue to decline because of this, I'm afraid that we won't be able to survive even 100 deaths. Master, we have to think of a way. After saying this, Han Qingyun secretly glanced at Gu Yunfei. Seeing that his face was still angry, he hurriedly said, Master, I won't let you down. Master, I won't implicate you. Please give me the medicine. I'll take these spirit-enhancing pills and test them myself. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei was stunned and asked, But, even if you take them, it won't be of any use. Chapter 388. After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun said sadly, Master, now that things have come to this, there's no other way. For the reputation of the Tiangongmen, I can only take the risk and try. Gu Yunfei sighed, with your martial arts, even if you take the spirit-enhancing pill, I'm afraid your abilities are still far from enough. Han Qingyun heard this and sighed, for the reputation of the Tiangongmen, I'm prepared to take 10 spirit-enhancing pills to test the effects. If it succeeds, there should still be a chance to try. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei's heart trembled violently. 10 spirit-enhancing pills would reduce one's lifespan by 20 years. He did not expect that Han Qingyun would be willing to take 10 spirit-enhancing pills for the reputation of the Tiangongmen. Looking at Han Qingyun's tear-stained face, Gu Yunfei suddenly felt a little ashamed. They were both disciples of the Tiangongmen, and he was also Han Qingyun's master. However, at this crucial moment, as a master, his awareness was not as high as Han Qingyun's. Thinking of this, Gu Yunfei's heart moved a little. He had just taken 1 spirit-enhancing pill and had already reduced his lifespan by 2 years. If he continued to take pills, he would only need to take 4 more. In this way, it would only reduce his lifespan by 8 years. Thinking of this, Gu Yunfei's heart began to hesitate. For the reputation of the Tiangongmen, was it worth it to reduce his lifespan by 10 years? If he had 10 more years of lifespan, how many benefits would he enjoy? Gu Yunfei repeatedly pondered between these two thoughts. One thought was for him to give up on this place and quickly enjoy life. The other thought was for the reputation of the Tiangongman, so what if he had to reduce his lifespan by 10 years? Furthermore, Han Qingyun was willing to reduce his lifespan by 20 years for the reputation of the Tiangongman. However, looking at Han Qingyun's shiny black hair, Gu Yunfei's heart began to hesitate again. Han Qingyun was much younger than him. Even if he reduced his lifespan by 20 years, he could still live for a long time. However, if he reduced his lifespan by 10 years, he really did not have many years left to live. Looking at his temples and his white hair, Gu Yunfei's heart became even more hesitant. Should he take the pill for the sake of the Tiangongman's honor, or should he leave this place and enjoy himself for a while longer? Han Qingyun stood to the side, his eyes secretly sizing up Gu Yunfei's face. Han Qingyun was very clear that even if he ate 10 strength-boosting pills, it would not have any effect. Moreover, he had no intention of eating this strength-boosting pill. The reason why he said this was only for Gu Yunfei to hear. Han Qingyun knew that if he said that, with Gu Yunfei's temper, there was an 80% to 90% chance that he would not let him eat the strength-enhancing pill and would choose to eat it himself. Asking Han Qingyun to take a spirit-boosting pill was just a rumor. It definitely couldn't be taken seriously. As the vice-sect head of the Heaven's Craftsman faction, he was second only to one person and above all. How could Han Qingyun take a spirit-boosting pill? Looking at Gu Yunfei's face, Han Qingyun was very calm at first. But after a while, he saw that Gu Yunfei was still hesitating. He didn't seem to want to eat the pill at all. Han Qingyun knew that if he continued to hesitate like this, Gu Yunfei might think it through and let him eat the spirit-strengthening pill. That would be terrible. Thinking of this, Han Qingyun immediately cried and kowtowed 3 times to his master. He said in a trembling voice, "Master, please give me the spirit-strengthening pill. I will eat it immediately and break Kikiaman's leather armor. I will raise the prestige of the Tiangongman." Saying this, Han Qingyun secretly looked at Gu Yunfei's face. He then continued, "Master, for the sake of the Tiangongman's honor, please give the spirit-strengthening pill to me. For the sake of the Tiangongman, I will not complain even if I have to die immediately. If 10 spirit-strengthening pills are not enough, then I will eat 20. In short, I must win this competition." Hearing Han Qingyun's pleading, Gu Yunfei sighed, "What's the point of eating more spirit-enhancing pills? It's just a waste of your lifespan. Have you forgotten that you can only eat 5 spirit-enhancing pills at most? After that, it's useless no matter how many you eat." After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun immediately beat his chest and stamped his feet. "Master, I don't believe you. I want to try. Maybe after eating 5 pills, the effect will be the same. Master, I believe that the ancestors of the Tiangongman will bless me and make the spirit-strengthening pill even stronger. Even if I eat more than 5 pills, there will still be an effect." Seeing Han Qingyun pleading so pitifully, Gu Yunfei couldn't help but furrow his brows even more. What should he do? Should he let Han Qingyun eat 10 spirit-strengthening pills, or should he eat 4? Gu Yunfei felt that the world was spinning. This choice was killing him. Just now, he had decided that he definitely couldn't take any more pills. He still wanted to save his remaining life to enjoy the things that he should enjoy. However, seeing Han Qingyun like this, for the sake of the Tiangongman's honor, he wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice himself. Seeing Han Qingyun's spirit, Gu Yunfei's thoughts started to come to life again. His own inner strength was strong. Even if he ate 5 spirit-strengthening pills, he might lose 10 years of his life. However, with his strong inner strength, he might be able to recover it. Once this idea arose in his mind, Gu Yunfei started to follow it. There were so many treasures in this world. Even if he lost 10 years of his life, he should be able to recover it by eating some treasures. With those treasures and his strong inner strength, he should be able to make up for those losses. If this really worked, it would be killing two birds with one stone. Not only would he be able to win glory for the Tiangongmen, but he would also be able to increase his reputation. He would let the Tiangongmen disciples see that he, the second elder of the Tiangongmen, was willing to sacrifice his life for the sake of the Tiangongmen's honor. Han Qingyun saw his master's eyebrows twitching and was secretly delighted. Based on his understanding of Gu Yunfei, he could already confirm that Gu Yunfei was moved. If there were no accidents, he believed that Gu Yunfei would agree to take those pills and work for the Tiangongmen very soon. Indeed, just as Han Qingyun thought, not long after, he heard Gu Yunfei's loud laughter. Hearing this laughter, Han Qingyun was instantly overjoyed. He knew that he had succeeded in getting Gu Yunfei to take the pills. To be honest, Han Qingyun knew much more about the spirit-strengthening pill than Gu Yunfei. One spirit-strengthening pill could reduce a person's life by 2 years. This was definitely not a lie. In fact, it was a little understated. The effect of the growth pill was to stimulate one's life potential to double one's strength. Gu Yunfei thought that by eating some spiritual pills and practicing his inner strength, he should be able to recover his lost life. However, he was wrong. After eating the growth pill, the loss of life was irreversible. Chapter 389. Consuming one spirit-enhancing pill would reduce one's lifespan by 2 years. This was just a general concept. The damage caused by the spirit-enhancing pill to the body was quite serious. If one ate 5 spirit-enhancing pills in a row, their body would be in a mess, and they would lose more than 10 years of their lifespan. Every time he ate an additional spirit-enhancing pill, the damage it caused to his body was not as simple as 1 + 1. If it were that simple, wouldn't everyone be eating the spirit-enhancing pill? If Han Qingyun really ate 10 spirit-enhancing pills, he would probably become a cripple after the effects wore off. It was precisely because of this that not many people dared to try the spirit-enhancing pill, even though they knew how powerful it was. Gu Yunfei laughed heartily for a while. When he lowered his head, his eyes were already filled with tears. He patted Han Qingyun's shoulder and said with a smile, "You're not strong enough. Even if you eat 10 spirit-enhancing pills, there won't be much of an effect. Furthermore, after 5 pills, there won't be any more effect. You'd better go back to the judge's table. I'll eat the spirit-enhancing pill." After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun's heart was already blooming with joy. However, on the surface, he squeezed out a few more tears. "Master, it's all my fault. I'm too weak and can't share your burden. Please punish me." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei sighed. "Hurry up and go back. I'll be fine here." As he looked at Gu Yunfei's aged face, Han Qingyun couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Once Gu Yunfei ate all 5 pills, the side effects of the spirit-enhancing pill would immediately take effect. No one knew what would happen to Gu Yunfei then. Gu Yunfei thought for a while before turning to look at Gu Yunfei. He sighed and said slowly, "Master, you're willing to eat the spirit-enhancing pill for the sake of the Tiangongmen. I'm very impressed." After saying this, Han Qingyun paused for a while before continuing, "Master, I want to say that you don't have to eat all 5 pills at once." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei subconsciously glanced at the Tiangongmen's equipment made of deep-sea cold iron and fine gold. He sighed. "I'm afraid it won't work. With the defense of your equipment, I'm afraid it won't be able to withstand a level 19 attack. Once Kikyaman breaks through our defenses, we'll lose this match." After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun shook his head. "Master, I'm going to use some more spiritual water to strengthen the defense of that equipment." "What?" After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei was stunned. "What did you say? Do you know what you are saying?" When Han Qingyun heard this, he nodded and said in a sorrowful tone, Master, your disciple couldn't bear to see you eat 5 spirit-enhancing pills in one go. That was the first time. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei's heart suddenly felt warm. His disciple was still the best. She was afraid that he would take too much medicine, so she didn't hesitate to use the spiritual water of the Tiangongmen to slow down his consumption of medicine. Thinking of this, Gu Yunfei started to hesitate. He was also very clear that it was best to take as little of a spirit-enhancing pill as possible. If he took 5 pills in one go, it would lead to bad consequences. That would be terrible. Of course, it would be best to take 1 pill at a time. However, he was afraid that the Tiangongmen's equipment wouldn't be able to withstand it. Both parties had already passed level 18. Gu Yunfei estimated that the effect of the spiritual water just now was between level 18 and 19. This meant that the Tiangongmen's equipment made of deep-sea cold iron and fine gold might not be able to withstand a level 19 attack, and its defense would be broken. If that was the case, wouldn't his consumption of the spirit-enhancing pills be in vain? However, the Tiangongmen only had 21 drops of spiritual water in total. They had already used 5 drops just now. If they used 5 more drops of spiritual water, they would have used up 10 drops of spiritual water in total. This was already the total amount of spiritual water that the Tiangongmen had. Most importantly, no one knew if the effects of the second use of these 5 drops of spiritual water would still be as strong as the first use. The first time he used the spiritual water, every drop of spiritual water could increase his defense by 10%. The second time he used the spiritual water, no one knew whether the effect was stronger or weaker. This was because no one would be so extravagant as to use 10 drops of spiritual water in one go on a piece of equipment. 10 drops of spiritual water. Gu Yunfei's heart ached when he thought of this number. However, if he didn't use it, he would have to take 5 spirit-enhancing pills in one go. Gu Yunfei hesitated again when he thought of the side effects of the spirit-enhancing pills. Seeing Gu Yunfei's hesitation, Han Qingyun sighed. Master, I'll make the decision on this matter. If anyone investigates, this disciple will bear all responsibility. Master should stick to the original plan and take the spirit-strengthening pills one by one. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei nodded silently and said, All right then. If the sect leader investigates this matter, I'll bear the consequences with you. Seeing that Gu Yunfei had agreed, Han Qingyun waved at Han Yuchao again. When Han Yuchao came closer, he whispered a few words to him and Han Yuchao ran out of the competition venue as if he was flying. Sun Qiao was shocked when she saw Han Qingyun's performance in front of Gu Yunfei. Han Qingyun kowtowed and bowed while Gu Yunfei kicked and hit him. In the end, the two of them cried bitterly together. Although Sun Qiao knew that the two of them were up to no good, she still couldn't bear to see them like this. Sun Qiao didn't have much ambition. She only wanted to lead the disciples of Kikyaman and live a peaceful life. At this moment, Sun Qiao couldn't understand why Han Qingyun was thinking of all kinds of bad ideas in order to win this competition. There was nothing wrong with shaking hands and making peace. By doing this, they wouldn't have to hurt each other and Han Qingyun wouldn't have to be in such a difficult position. Most importantly, the Tiangongmen had already sacrificed too much for this competition. If this continued, the Tiangongmen might have to pay a heavy price. Seeing that Han Qingyun had returned, Sun Qiao couldn't hold it in any longer. After Han Qingyun sat down, Sun Qiao said softly, Sect Leader Han, I think this competition shouldn't continue. But Senior has already eaten a spirit-enhancing pill. That kind of pill isn't good for people, and I heard that it can even shorten one's lifespan. Sect Leader Han, why do you have to do this? As long as we make peace, we can pretend that this competition never happened. Isn't that great? When Han Qingyun heard Sun Qiao's good intentions, he felt that Sun Qiao's words were like a slap to his face. He was so ashamed that he couldn't show his face. Would the great Tiangongmen negotiate with a small sect like Kikyaman? If news of this got out, the Tiangongmen wouldn't have the face to take in other small sections. Chapter 390. Moreover, Han Qinyun had already made preparations. Gu Yunfei would eat the spirit-enhancing pill and then use the spirit water to increase the defense of his equipment. With these two preparations, Han Qinyun felt that there was no reason for him to lose. Regardless of whether the effects of the spirit water were strengthened or weakened, Han Qinyun estimated that 5 drops of spirit water would at least increase the defense of this armor to level 21. Would Kikyaman's leather armor, which was made from the skin of a wild bear, be able to withstand an attack above level 20? Han Qinyun thought about it and felt that it was unlikely. No matter how good the leather armor was, it was only leather armor. If it could reach level 19, it should have reached its limit. Perhaps the next attack would be able to break through Kikyaman's defense in one fell swoop. Moreover, Gu Yunfei would eat a spirit-enhancing pill every time he attacked, doubling his strength. Han Qinyun believed that even if Kikyaman's leather armor was made from the skin of a dragon, it would not be able to withstand so many attacks. Thinking of this, Han Qinyun turned to look at Sun Qiao and sneered, "Sect leader son, as the leader of a sect, don't you know the rules?" Hearing Han Qinyun's words, Sun Qiao was stunned. She asked curiously, "Rules? What rules?" Han Qinyun sneered, "In a competition between two sects, there must be a winner. Unless one side concedes defeat, the competition must continue." Speaking of this, Han Qinyun gritted his teeth and said fiercely, "Sect leader son, our competition today is the same. Unless one side concedes defeat, the competition must continue until there is a winner." Hearing Han Qinyun's words, Sun Qiao subconsciously looked at Gu Yunfei, and a surprised expression appeared on her face. After a while, Sun Qiao pointed at Gu Yunfei and turned to look at Han Qinyun. Her voice trembled as she said, "Sect leader Han, why must we continue the competition? Can't you see that Senior Gu is taking the medicine that can shorten his life?" Speaking of this, Sun Qiao took a deep breath and calmed her somewhat agitated mood before continuing. "Sect leader Han, I heard that Senior Gu is your master. Aren't you going to persuade your master to take that medicine? It's really not good for him to take too much of it." After hearing Sun Qiao's words, Han Qinyun clapped her hands. Following which, a cold smile appeared on her face. "Sect master son, is it because the defense of your equipment is reaching its limit? Is that why you're using my master as an excuse to stop this match?" Speaking of this, Han Qinyun paused for a moment, then continued in a more serious tone. "Sect leader son," he said, "Sect leader Han, I won't be fooled by you. No matter what you say, I'm not going to stop the competition. Unless you admit defeat. Otherwise, it's impossible to stop the competition." After hearing Han Qinyun's words, Sun Qiao was so angry that she opened her mouth wide and stared at Han Qinyun. After a long while, she slowly sighed, "Sect leader Han, since you think that I'm looking for an excuse, then I won't say anything. However, Senior Gu is your master after all. It's better that you advise him not to take that kind of medicine anymore." Han Qinyun sneered, "Sect leader son, you don't have to worry. As long as Sect leader son can join the Tiangongmen after losing this competition, it'll be worth it even if my master takes a few pills." Hearing this, Sun Qiao asked in shock, "Is it really worth it?" Han Qinyun sneered, "Of course it's worth it. Kikyaman's equipment manufacturing technology is practically a miracle in my eyes. If Sect leader son joins our sect, then this miracle will become the Tiangongmen's technology. As long as the Tiangongmen obtain this technology, I'm willing to pay any price." Speaking up to this point, Han Qinyun paused for a moment before continuing. "Not only am I willing to pay any price, But the most important thing is that we Tiangongmen can also afford it. Speaking up to this point, Han Qingyun pointed at Han Yuchao, who was running back from outside the competition area, and smiled. Sect leader's son, I won't hide it from you. Did you see that? I asked someone to bring 5 drops of spirit water. As long as I pour these 5 drops of spirit water on my equipment's defense will immediately increase by 50%. Sect leader's son, do you think that Kikyaman can still defeat us with this additional 50% defense of my equipment? Hearing Han Qingyun's words, Sun Qiaoer instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. She only knew that Han Qingyun and Gu Yunfei were discussing something bad, but she didn't expect it to be this bad. The Tiangongmen's equipment, which was made from deep-sea cold iron and fine gold, was already on the verge of collapse when it was at level 13. However, after the spirit water was poured on it, it immediately persevered until level 18, and its defense was still not broken. If the spirit water was poured on top of that, wouldn't it mean that it could persevere until level 20? Thinking up to this point, Sun Qiaoer's breathing quickened. There were 2 problems that she had to consider. The first problem was that Prince Zhang had once said that this ancestral skill of his had a time limit. The competition had already been going on for so long. Was the time limit for Prince Zhang's ancestral skill up? The second problem was that although Prince Zhang's ancestral skill was powerful, no one dared to say whether it could withstand a level 20 attack. Gu Yunfei's martial arts were outstanding, and his skills were not to be underestimated. Gu Yunfei's full power attack, coupled with a level 20 sword, could probably cause damage at level 23. The most important thing was that Gu Yunfei had taken medicine. Every time he took a spirit-enhancing pill, his skills would double. If this continued, how terrifying would Gu Yunfei's strength be when he ate the 5th spirit-enhancing pill? His leather armor must have been able to withstand such a powerful attack. Thinking up to this point, cold sweat broke out on Sun Qiaoer's forehead. The best way to solve this problem was for both sides to come to an agreement. Sun Qiaoer didn't want to lose. If she lost, according to the contract, she would have to join the Tiangongmen and work for the Tiangongmen. It was precisely because Sun Qiaoer didn't want to join the Tiangongmen that the 2 sides had this competition. Thinking that her leather armor would have to withstand such a terrifying attack, Sun Qiaoer couldn't sit still anymore. She stood up abruptly and wanted to ask Zhang Meng how many levels of attacks this leather armor could withstand after using his ancestral skill. Sun Qiaoer had just stood up when she heard Han Qingyun's voice in her ear. Clan leader's son, are you afraid? Are you thinking of running away? After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Sun Qiaoer, who was in a mess, finally came to her senses. She definitely couldn't go to Zhang Meng. If she went to Zhang Meng and asked him this question, Han Qingyun would definitely find out that something was wrong. With Han Qingyun's temper, as long as he found out that Zhang Meng was the cause of the problem, Sun Qiaoer was sure that Han Qingyun would definitely chase Zhang Meng out of the competition grounds. The problem was that once Zhang Meng left the competition grounds, Chapter 391. What Sun Qiaoer was worried about was what if Zhang Meng's ancestral skill lost its effect when he left the arena. Sun Qiaoer was certain that once Prince Zhang's skill lost its effect, her leather armor would be smashed into pieces in the blink of an eye. Thinking of this, Sun Qiaoer took a deep breath and calmed her chaotic emotions. Then, she slowly sat back down on her seat. Seeing Sun Qiaoer sit back down, Han Qingyun suddenly sneered. He gritted his teeth and said, "Leader's son, I don't care how heaven-defying your equipment is. No matter what, I will destroy your equipment today and show everyone here that we, the Tiangongmen, are not to be trifled with." Sun Qiaoer turned to look at Han Qingyun and asked, "Is defeating our Kikyaman really that important to you?" Hearing Sun Qiaoer's question, Han Qingyun sneered. It might not have been important in the past, but it's different now. You have such amazing crafting skills. In my eyes, your Kikyaman is very different. At this point, Han Qingyun's eyes suddenly flashed with madness. If I obtain this amazing crafting skill, the Tiangongman will become even stronger in my hands. Seeing Han Qingyun's crazy eyes, Sun Qiao was shocked. She quickly turned her head away from him. Han Yuchao poured 5 drops of spiritual water on the equipment. A moment later, the equipment burst out with a white light again. Seeing this white light, Han Qingyun was completely relieved. As long as this white light appeared, the armor's defense would increase again. The white light that flashed on the armor almost blinded Yun Jianbai's eyes. Spiritual water. The Tiangongman poured spiritual water on the equipment again. Yun Jianbai's heart ached when he thought of the 5 drops of spiritual water on the equipment. Although the equipment's materials were good, in the eyes of these master craftsmen, it was still far from the best materials. If the spiritual water was used on the best materials, wouldn't it be even more effective? If this spirit water was poured onto a top-grade treasure sword, the quality of this treasure sword would immediately undergo a tremendous change. It was even possible for it to become a famous sword. Looking at the Tiangongman pouring out spiritual water like pouring cold water, Yun Jianbai could no longer hold it in. He turned his head to look at Han Qingyun and asked tentatively, "Sect leader Han, can I discuss something with you?" Looking at Yun Jianbai's mysterious eyes, Han Qingyun nodded. "Brother Yun, there's no need to be so polite between us. If there's anything you need, just say the word. As long as I can do it, I'll definitely help you." Hearing Han Qingyun's words, Yun Jianbai did not dare to relax. He hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Sect leader Han, I see that the Tiangongmen have a lot of spiritual water. Can you sell some to us?" When Yun Jianbai saw that Han Qingyun's face had suddenly turned ugly, he hurriedly added, "Sect leader Han, don't worry. The price is negotiable. If you don't want money, the materials are fine too. As long as you're willing to sell me the spiritual water, you can name the price. I won't bargain." After hearing Yun Jianbai's words, Han Qingyun took a deep breath and slowly said, "Brother Yun, if you want something else, as your brother, I definitely won't refuse. As for the spiritual water, there's no need to talk about it." Although he had already guessed that Han Qingyun would refuse, after hearing Han Qingyun's refusal, Yun Jianbai still felt a little awkward. He hurriedly apologized and hurriedly returned to his seat before he could say anything else. Yun Jianbai also knew that this matter should not be mentioned. However, seeing the Tiangongmen continuously using the spiritual water, Yun Jianbai was too envious and did not want to try his luck. Unfortunately, he was not lucky enough to encounter it. Instead, he was met with a nose full of dust. When Ye Tianhao saw that Yun Jianbai had regained his composure, he could not help but ask softly with an awkward expression, "Great Master Yun, I heard you and sect leader Han talking about the spiritual water just now. What is the spiritual water? Is it very important?" Hearing Ye Tianhao's question, Yun Jianbai sighed and said softly, "It is indeed very important. Did you see the potion that young master he poured on his equipment?" After Yun Jianbai's reminder, Ye Tianhao suddenly remembered that after Han Yuchao poured the potion, his equipment had emitted a white light. Thinking of this, Ye Tianhao recalled what had happened just now. His heart skipped a beat and he hurriedly asked in a low voice, "Great Master Yun, can that potion increase the defensive power of equipment?" Hearing Ye Tianhao's question, Yun Jianbai subconsciously glanced at Han Qingyun. Seeing that Han Qingyun was not looking in his direction, he turned his head to look at Ye Tianhao and nodded lightly. "That's right. This potion is called the spiritual water. It's a true treasure." Hearing Yun Jianbai praise the potion so highly, Ye Tianhao was shocked and hurriedly asked, "This potion can increase defensive power. Is the effect very strong?" Yun Jianbai nodded. "Strong, very strong. It said that every drop of spiritual water can increase one's defensive power by 10%. Do you think this effect is strong? After hearing Yun Jianbai's answer, Nie Tianhao was shocked. He hurriedly turned his head to look at the Tiangongman's equipment made of deep-sea cold iron and fine gold. After being stunned for a while, he turned his head to look at Yun Jianbai and whispered, "I think the potion that young Master Han poured out just now has more than one drop." Yun Jianbai nodded. It said that a small bottle can hold 5 drops of spiritual water. If I'm not wrong, the bottle in young Master Han's hand is the kind that can hold 5 drops of spiritual water. 5 drops. Hearing Yun Jianbai's answer, Nie Tianhao was shocked. He said in a trembling voice, "Young Master Han has already poured spiritual water on that equipment twice. Could it be that he has already used it?" Hearing Nie Tianhao's question, Yun Jianbai nodded reluctantly. "Indeed, I have a 10th brother." Hearing Yun Jianbai's affirmative answer, Nie Tianhao looked at the equipment and was stunned for a while. After recovering from his shock, he turned his head to look at Yun Jianbai and asked word by word, "Is there a lot of this spiritual water?" Hearing this, Yun Jianbai shook his head with a crying smile. "Although I don't know how much there is or how he got it, I'm sure that there isn't a lot of this spiritual water. Even the Tiangongmen probably don't have much of it." Hearing Yun Jianbai's answer, Nie Tianhao was even more shocked. Since the Tiangongmen don't have much of this potion, why would they need 10 drops of it to deal with a small Kikyaman? Yun Jianbai sighed and pointed at the 7 possibilities sex leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear as he lamented. "I think the problem lies with the Kikyaman's leather armor." Hearing Yun Jianbai's words, Nie Tianhao's eyes lit up. "Master Yun, you're saying that sect leader Han wants to obtain the crafting technique of this kind of equipment?" Hearing this, Yun Jianbai nodded. "If I'm not wrong, that must be the case." Chapter 392. Everything was ready and waiting for the announcement of the match. Fan Yen stood up and looked at Han Qingyun and Sun Qiao. He smiled and asked, "Sect Masters, is there anything else? If there's nothing else, the competition will begin." After Fan Yen asked this question, he saw that Han Qingyun and Sun Qiao both nodded. Only then did he shout at the competition venue, "Level 19 test, begin." Following Fan Yan's command, Han Yuchao quickly took down the level 19 sword from the weapon rack and ran to Gu Yunfei, handing him the level 19 sword with both hands. Gu Yunfei took the sword from Han Yuchao's hand and slowly walked towards Kikyaman's leather armor. Sun Qiao kept staring at Gu Yunfei. She wanted to see how strong the second spirit boosting pill would be. The most important thing was whether or not her leather armor could withstand this terrifying attack. At this point, it was no exaggeration to say that Gu Yunfei's strength was terrifying. 2 spirit-boosting pills could increase Gu Yunfei's strength by 2-fold. This kind of increase in strength was unimaginable. Gu Yunfei's strength was already very high. With the 2-fold increase, his strength would definitely be very strong. Gu Yunfei slowly walked towards Kikyaman's leather armor and stared at it. After a while, he suddenly thought of something and a stream of true qi came out of his body. In an instant, this stream of true qi flowed around, and the dust and sand on the ground started to swirl in the air again. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the dust and sand started to swirl faster and faster, and there was even a faint sound of air being torn apart. Seeing this, everyone couldn't stay calm anymore. They all stood up and ran towards the distance. The attack just now was enough to injure people. This time, there was no need to experience it live. Just the sound of the sand and sand tearing through the air was not to be underestimated. Ben Tion's injury was swirling in the air like a tornado, dancing around the competition grounds. The tornado made of dust and sand was spinning faster and faster, and the sound was getting louder and louder. Gu Yunfei, who was standing in the middle of the tornado, felt the feeling of being blown by the tornado. He nodded in satisfaction. This was the power that he yearned for even in his dreams. With just a wave of his hand, he could bring him immense power. Gu Yunfei slowly raised the saber in his hand. With a thought, a dark red light rose from the tip of the saber like a red ribbon. It rose to a height of about 3 meters before stopping. Looking at the tip of the saber, Gu Yunfei once again nodded in satisfaction. After eating 2 spirit-boosting pills, his strength had become so terrifying that even he himself was shocked by this ferocious power. Looking through the sky full of sand and stones, Gu Yunfei saw the leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear. He suddenly roared and shook his wrist slightly. The level 19 saber left a 3-meter-long blade aura as it slashed at the leather armor. After it hit the leather armor, it immediately made a muffled sound. Even if everyone ran far away, they could still hear the muffled sound. After the sound, the dust in the sky was immediately blown away by the shock wave. Just as everyone heard the sound, the sky full of sand and stones flew over their heads, making a slight sound as they broke through the air. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. They had run quite a distance, but they didn't expect that the small sand and stones could still fly so far. Sun Qiaoer and the others hid behind a wall. When they heard the sound of the sand and stones hitting the wall, they were shocked. If they were hit by such a powerful attack, they would definitely be injured. After a while, the sound gradually disappeared. Only then did everyone walk out from behind the wall. The dust in the sky had been blown away by the tyrannical true qi fluctuations. There was no longer any dust floating in the arena. Everyone only saw Gu Yunfei standing not far from the leather armor. He was staring at the leather armor with a strange expression. Seeing this scene, Han Qingyun was shocked. He had a faint bad feeling in his heart. He quickly walked a few steps and stopped not far away. Looking at Kikiaman's leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear, Han Qingyun's expression changed. His eyes widened. The leather armor was still hanging there unscathed. Such a powerful attack, but it still couldn't break through the leather armor's defense. Han Qingyun stood there in a daze for a long time. He suddenly walked up to the leather armor. Just as he was about to reach out to grab it, he suddenly heard Sun Qiaoer's voice. "Sect Leader Han, what are you doing?" Hearing Sun Qiaoer's voice, Han Qingyun came to his senses. He quickly retracted his hand and went to Gu Yunfei to ask in a low voice, "Master, when you attacked the leather armor just now, did you feel anything?" After hearing Han Qingyun's question, Gu Yunfei smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I only felt that I hit something hard. Other than that, I didn't feel anything else." After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun was stunned. He reacted and asked in a low voice, "Master, did you feel wrong? Kikiaman's leather armor is made from the skin of a wild bear. How could it feel like something hard?" Hearing Han Qingyun's question, Gu Yunfei was stunned. Then, he frowned and muttered to himself in confusion, "That's right. Since it's leather armor, it should be soft. How could it feel like something hard? Could it be that I felt wrong just now?" Hearing Gu Yunfei's mutterings, Han Qingyun subconsciously turned to look at Kikiaman's leather armor. He squinted for a long time but couldn't find the problem. This leather armor was just an ordinary leather armor. Han Qingyun was sure of that. But why did Gu Qingyun feel that way? What was the reason behind this? Thinking of this, Han Qingyun turned to look at Sun Qiaoer. He was even more confused. A small Kikiaman could make leather armor with such high defense. Who would believe it if it was told to others? No, there must be a problem. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible to make leather armor with such high defense from the skin of a wild bear. But where did the problem lie? Han Qingyun thought for a while, and turned to look at Gu Yunfei. He asked in a low voice, "Master, the sky was full of dust just now. I couldn't see anything. Could you see the leather armor in the dust?" Hearing Han Qingyun's question, Gu Yunfei nodded and said in a low voice, I deliberately made the dust in the sky so that no one could see what I was doing in the dust. The dust only swirled around me, but there wasn't a single speck of dust around me. Naturally, I could see the leather armor clearly. Hearing Gu Yunfei's answer, Han Qingyun hurriedly asked, Master, think carefully. Did your knife really hit the leather armor? After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei was a little confused. He looked at Han Qingyun and was stunned for a long time. Chapter 393. Gu Yunfei hesitated for a moment before nodding. I've been watching. It must have been the leather armor. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been that feeling of being blocked. Hearing Gu Yunfei's answer, Han Qingyun was a little doubtful. Could it be that he had guessed wrongly? The reason why he couldn't break through the defense of the leather armor was because the defense of the leather armor was too strong. However, Han Qingyun couldn't believe that a leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear could have such a terrifying defense. In Han Qingyun's opinion, it was something that he didn't dare to imagine. Thinking of this, Han Qingyun turned to look at Gu Yunfei and said in a deep voice, Master, since everyone knows about your strength, there's no need to hide it. I think that when you test it later, there's no need to fill the sky with dust to prevent it from affecting the vision. Speaking of this, Han Qingyun paused for a moment before continuing, This way, I can also watch from the side and see if there's anything fishy. Hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei was stunned for a moment before nodding his head. Initially, he had filled the sky with dust to prevent others from seeing his full strength. Now that everyone knew about it, there was no need to hide it anymore. Gu Yunfei muttered to himself for a moment before slowly saying, Do you think there's something fishy about this? Han Qingyun nodded his head and said with certainty, Yes, there must be. Otherwise, no matter how good the craftsmanship is, an armor made from the skin of a wild bear wouldn't be able to reach such a level. Speaking of this, Han Qingyun turned his head to look at Gu Yunfei and said in a low voice, Master, have you heard of any sect that has such heaven-defying craftsmanship? Gu Yunfei shook his head. No, but the world is so big. Even if some strange things happen, it shouldn't be strange. Hearing Gu Yunfei's answer, Han Qingyun shook his head again. Impossible. Just relying on craftsmanship to achieve such a strong defense, in my opinion, it's impossible. Unless they also have a treasure like the spirit water that can increase the defense of equipment, otherwise it's absolutely impossible. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei turned his head to look at the leather armor in front of him and nodded. It seems that this is the only explanation that can explain why the defense of this leather armor is so strong. Upon hearing Gu Yunfei's answer, Han Qingyun sneered. If they really used a treasure like the spirit water, then Kikyaman must have paid a hefty price. However, no matter how good a treasure is, there is bound to be a limit. Just like our spirit water, it can only increase the defensive power of equipment to a certain extent. After the equipment's limit is exceeded, the equipment's defense will still be broken. I think that Master's attack power has increased by 2 times. Under such a powerful attack, this equipment should not be far from its limit. Perhaps in the next attack, this equipment will be smashed into pieces. After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei's eyes lit up. The spirit water was the most valuable treasure in the world. Every drop of it could increase the defensive power of equipment by 10%. If the Tiangongman's leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear was also used, the defensive power of this leather armor would be increased to a certain extent. Although the defensive power was relatively strong, there would always be a limit. As long as the attack power exceeded the defensive power of this leather armor, the leather armor would immediately be smashed into pieces. Gu Yunfei turned his head to look at Kikyaman's leather armor. He clenched his fist and said fiercely, I must break the defense of this leather armor and show Kikyaman that we Tiangongmen are absolutely invincible. After saying this, Gu Yunfei turned his head to look at Han Qingyun and asked in a low voice, "Based on your guess, what is the limit of this equipment? What level of attack would be able to break its defense?" After hearing Gu Yunfei's question, Han Qingyun frowned and thought for a moment before slowly saying, "Just now, Master used a level 19 sword. Coupled with Master's all-out attack and 2 spirit-strengthening pills, a simple estimate would be that the last attack would be around level 23. Based on my guess, no matter how strong the defense of this leather armor is, I'm afraid it won't be able to withstand a level 25 attack." After hearing Han Qingyun's answer, Gu Yunfei's heart was instantly filled with joy. He nodded and said, "Your guess is similar to mine. The limit of this leather armor should be around level 25. After hearing this, Han Qingyun turned his head to look at the Tiangongman's equipment. He then lowered his voice and said, "After using the spirit water, if there are no accidents, that equipment of ours should be able to withstand a level 22 attack." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei could not help but frown. "Based on your calculations, after using the 5 drops of spirit water, this equipment's defense would only increase by 4 levels?" After hearing Gu Yunfei's question, Han Qingyun shook his head and said, "This is just a simple estimate of mine. Based on my guess, although the effect of the spirit water is strong, it shouldn't be able to increase the defense without limit. Based on my experience, no matter what kind of treasure it is, the effect will be the strongest the first time it is used. When it is used for the second time, the effect will definitely weaken. The first time we used the 5 drops of spirit water, it increased the defense of this equipment by 5 levels. The second time we used the 5 drops of spirit water, if the effect will weaken, the defense of this equipment should only increase by 3 or 4 levels. The 4 levels that I said should be the limit." After hearing Han Qingyun's words, Gu Yunfei's frown deepened. He had to admit that Han Qingyun's words made sense. Just like the spirit-strengthening pills, after eating 5 of them, the effect would not be that strong. However, this was only a legend because the person who ate the most pills only ate 5 at most. After eating 5 spirit-strengthening pills, one's lifespan would be reduced by 10 years. No one would complain that their lifespan was too long. After reducing their lifespan by 10 years, they would still eat more spirit-strengthening pills. Han Qingyun's guess about the spirit water was really just a guess. After all these years, no one had used so much spirit water. Since no one had used so much spirit water, the specific effect naturally could not be used as a reference. However, in Gu Yunfei's opinion, Han Qingyun's estimation should be correct. According to the analysis of the decreasing effect, the second time the spirit water increased the defense by 4 levels should be considered not bad. Seeing that Gu Yunfei agreed with his theory, Han Qingyun continued, "We have already tested the attack at level 19. Next, we will test the attack at level 20. In this way, we still have 3 chances to reach the limit. As for Kikyaman, if I'm not wrong, Master only needs 2 more attacks to break their defense." Chapter 394. After listening to Han Qingyun's analysis, Gu Yunfei was overjoyed. He quickly asked, "If that's the case, doesn't that mean we don't have to take that spirit-enhancing pill anymore?" After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun was stunned for a moment, then nodded. "Master, if there was a way, I wouldn't let you take that pill. Since you don't have to take it anymore, isn't that better?" Hearing that they didn't have to take that pill, Gu Yunfei was overjoyed. "Good, that's great. With just 2 more attacks we can break through the defense of that leather armor. That's great." Seeing how happy Gu Yunfei was, Han Qingyun quickly said, "Master, even so, you can't be careless. Every time you attack, you have to go all out. If you can break through his defense earlier, you won't have to worry anymore." Gu Yunfei nodded. "Don't worry, I know this. I won't be careless." After hearing Gu Yunfei's words, Han Qingyun was relieved. He turned to leave and returned to the judge's table. As soon as Han Qingyun returned to the judge's table, he noticed that the other judges were also whispering. When they saw Han Qingyun return, they immediately stopped talking. Although Han Qingyun didn't know what they were talking about, he knew that they were talking about Kikyaman's leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear. In fact, Kikyaman's leather armor not only attracted the attention of the judges, even Han Qingyun was drooling. If he could get his hands on this technology, Han Qingyun would definitely be overjoyed. Han Qingyun was sure that if he really mastered this technology, it wouldn't take more than 3 years for the Tiangongman's position to be beckoned to him. This was definitely not Han Qingyun's wild guess. Zhu Jinshi might be the faction head of the Heavens Craftsman faction right now, but once Han Qingyun mastered more advanced techniques, she would definitely have a chance to get her hands on the position of faction head. Zhu Jinshi relied on his superior manufacturing skills to become the leader. Why couldn't he, Han Qingyun, rely on his superior manufacturing skills to become the leader? At this point in the competition, Han Qingyun had long forgotten his initial goal. Now, all he wanted was to get his hands on Kikyaman's technology. That was the most important thing. Looking at Sun Qiao's indifferent face, Han Qingyun could not understand how such a small workshop sect could have such superb skills. Most importantly, he had never heard of this technology before. He had never even seen it before, which made him very suspicious. Han Qingyun turned to look at Prince Zhang, who was on the other side of the judging panel. He was even more confused. He had originally guessed that this technology should have been provided by young Master Zhang. However, no matter how he looked at it, he could not tell that young Master Zhang had such advanced manufacturing skills. If they possessed such a high level of crafting skills, the news would have spread far and wide in the Jianghu. How would it be like now, where he had not even heard of it? Could it be that this matter really had nothing to do with Prince Zhang? But that couldn't be right. Han Qingyun remembered that at the beginning, Sun Qiao had said that Prince Zhang was here to help. Since he was here to help, he must have the ability to help. Raising the defense of this equipment to such a high level must have been the result of Prince Zhang's help. Thinking of this, Han Qingyun's eyes suddenly flashed with a hint of coldness. Regardless of whether this matter was done by Prince Zhang or not, he definitely couldn't let him go. As long as this competition ended, he would immediately send people to capture him. He believed that after capturing him, he would be able to immediately find out whether he was the culprit or not. The competition continued. The level 19 attack had ended. The Tiangongman's and Kikyaman's equipment had both been upgraded to level 20 after withstanding the level 19 attack. With the results of his discussion with Han Qingyun, Gu Yunfei felt much more relaxed. At the very least, he did not need to take any more potions for this attack. If he guessed correctly, this equipment's peak should be level 25. This was not a wild guess by Han Qingyun and Gu Yunfei. Once a piece of equipment reached level 25, it would no longer be an ordinary piece of equipment. Level 25 was a dividing line. Equipment below level 25 was considered ordinary. After level 25, equipment would be considered God tier. Thinking about it, Gu Yunfei's strength had only increased to level 23 after doubling his strength. One could only imagine how terrifying a level 25 attack was. Equipment that could withstand a level 25 attack was definitely God-tier equipment. Gu Yunfei held the level 20 saber in his hand and slowly walked to Kikyaman's equipment. As his thoughts rose, the true qi began to flow through his body. Gu Yunfei enjoyed this feeling very much. After eating 2 spirit-boosting pills, the true energy flowed wildly through his meridians. Even if the true energy was not released, Gu Yunfei could still feel how terrifying it was. The true energy flowed through his body once. This time, Gu Yunfei did not release his true energy. This was because it was meaningless. Everyone knew his strength, and it would be bad if he continued to hide it. Gu Yunfei slowly raised his saber. This time, there was no dust in the way, so everyone could see it clearly. As Gu Yunfei released his true qi, the saber in his hand gradually spat out a red saber light. The glow on the tip of the saber had already reached a deep red color. Everyone had only heard of this glow, but they did not expect to see it with their own eyes. For a moment, the audience in the stands exclaimed in admiration. Who would have thought that it would be a deep red glow? I've heard that the Tiangongman's elder Ji's martial arts are powerful, and his inner strength is unparalleled. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, it is indeed extraordinary. I've heard that the Sky Sword Sect's Grandmaster, Jiang Nantian, only managed to cultivate a deep red glow. I didn't expect Elder Gu to have such power as well. Gu Yunfei's martial arts were powerful, so he naturally heard the crowd's discussions. Hearing the crowd's praises, Gu Yunfei's face immediately showed a hint of pride. People who practiced martial arts liked to hear others praise their martial arts skills. Gu Yunfei was even more satisfied when he heard these people comparing him with the Sky Sword Sect's Grandmaster, Jiang Nantian. Jiang Nantian, the Sky Sword Sect's Grandmaster, was the most powerful person in the South County. In terms of martial arts, if Jiang Nantian claimed to be the second most powerful person in the South County, no one would dare to claim to be the first. Now, someone actually compared him with Jiang Nantian. This made Gu Yunfei feel like he was floating in the air. Gu Yunfei felt that the true qi in his body had reached its limit. Only then did he let out a cold snort and take a step forward. At the same time, he tightly gripped the hilt of his saber with both hands. In the next moment, he suddenly exerted force with both hands. The level 20 saber, with a long crimson tail, fiercely slashed towards the 7 Skills Sect's leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear. Bang! The saber in Gu Yunfei's hand made contact with the 7 Possibilities Sect's leather armor and issued a muffled sound. Chapter 395. When Gu Yunfei's saber struck Kikyaman's leather armor, a dull thud was heard. After the thud, everyone felt a gust of wind blow in front of them, causing their clothes to flutter. Even their faces were hurt by the gust of wind. When Gu Yunfei had struck Kikyaman's leather armor with his saber, Han Qinyun had been watching closely. He wanted to see how the leather armor would block Gu Yunfei's saber. Han Qinyun only saw that when Gu Yunfei's saber struck the leather armor, a gust of wind blew in front of his eyes. Subconsciously, Han Qinyun closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes, Gu Yunfei had already retreated to the side with his saber. Looking at the leather armor that was still in perfect condition, Han Qinyun was still taken aback even though he had expected it to be so. This time, Gu Yunfei's attack wasn't covered by dust. Han Qinyun saw clearly that Gu Yunfei hadn't held back. After such a powerful attack, the leather armor made from the skin of a wild bear wasn't damaged at all. Seeing this, Han Qinyun's heart was in his mouth again. According to his estimation, Gu Yunfei's attack this time must have been at least level 24. Just now, he and Gu Yunfei had guessed that the leather armor was at most level 25 because after level 25, it would become a god-tier equipment. According to their guesses, Kikyaman's equipment couldn't have been higher than level 25. Han Qinyun and Gu Yunfei's guesses were actually very reasonable. In terms of quality, the skin of a wild bear was destined to have a low defense. Although it could be enhanced by special crafting or treasures, the skin of a wild bear was limited in terms of quality. No matter how good Kikyaman's crafting was or how precious the treasures were, it couldn't change the quality of a wild bear's skin. This was the reason why Han Qinyun and Gu Yunfei guessed. To reach god-tier equipment, it wasn't just a matter of crafting. It was also a matter of materials. If the quality of the materials wasn't good enough, no matter how capable you were, you wouldn't be able to surpass the peak of common tier. If one wanted to reach the divine grade, they would need relatively good materials. Not to mention the wilderness bear's hide, even the hide of a diamond monster would be a waste. The quality was too low, and it was impossible for it to reach the divine grade. It was like an ordinary piece of scrap metal. No matter how high the craftsmanship was or how many additives there were, it would not be able to reach the state of upgrading. Although Han Qingyun and Gu Yunfei's guesses were reasonable, they couldn't help feeling uneasy when they looked at the leather armor, which had withstood an attack equivalent to a level 24 attack. However, this uneasiness only lasted for a moment, because in their minds, no matter how you refine the wild bear's skin, it would never reach the divine level. In other words, it would never be able to withstand a level 25 attack. Kikiaman's equipment had withstood a level 20 attack. Next, it was the Tiangongman's turn to face a level 20 attack. The female disciple of the Seven Skills sect held the level 20 saber and stopped 7 to 8 meters away from the Heaven's Craftsman faction's equipment made from deep-sea cold iron and fine gold. She first performed a few simple movements and warmed up her limbs. When she felt that all the strength in her body was ready, she raised the level 20 saber with both hands. Suddenly, she widened her eyes and howled before charging toward the Heaven's Craftsman faction's equipment. This Tiangongman's female disciple wasn't very strong. She couldn't jump high to increase her attack power. She had no choice but to run for a distance to increase her attack power. Ding! The Tiangongman's female disciple's level 20 sword landed on the Tiangongman's equipment made of deep-sea cold iron and fine gold. Immediately after, the huge impact caused the Tiangongman's female disciple's hand to hurt. She couldn't help but take 3 or 4 steps back before she could stabilize herself. The Tiangongman's female disciple didn't care about the pain in her hand. As soon as she steadied herself, she looked at the Tiangongman's equipment to see the effect of her attack. Unfortunately, the Tiangongman's equipment made of deep-sea cold iron and fine gold was still as smooth as a mirror after being slashed by a level 20 sword. There wasn't a single scratch. Sun Qiao sighed in her heart as she watched her disciple slash at the Tiangongman's equipment. She was so nervous that her eyes almost popped out of their socket. Since when did equipment testing become a competition of brute force? According to Sun Qiao's past experience, both sides would choose a neutral sect to test their equipment to ensure fairness. But now it was no different from a competition of brute force. Kikiaman's female disciple wasn't very strong. Even if she used all her strength, she wouldn't be able to display a higher level of strength. However, the Tiangongmen were different. Gu Yunfei was no ordinary person. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he was famous in the entire South region. Gu Yunfei was very strong and his inner strength was very strong. If he attacked, even if he didn't use all his strength, his attack power would increase by 1 level. Moreover, not only did Gu Feiying use all his strength, he even ate 2 spirit-boosting pills to increase his strength by 2 times. Sun Qiao wanted to stop this. This was clearly cheating. However, Han Qingyun didn't agree. More importantly, the contract signed by both sides didn't object to this. Although Sun Qiao was very angry, she couldn't do anything. If she wanted to withdraw from the competition, it meant that she admitted defeat. Now, Sun Qiao could only pray. She prayed that her leather armor's defense was stronger and that Prince Zhang's ancestral skill could withstand such a powerful attack. Other than that, Sun Qiao had no other choice. Seeing the red glow on Gu Yunfei's sword, Fan Yin couldn't help but turn to Nie Tianhao and ask in a low voice, "I didn't expect Gu Yunfei's strength to be so high." At this point, Fan Yin paused for a moment before he continued. "For an elder to possess such strength, I wonder if he is stronger than your master?" After hearing Fan Yan's words, Nie Tianhao nodded. "He's indeed very strong. However, compared to my master, he's still a little weaker." After hearing Nie Tianhao's answer, Fan Yan's eyes lit up. He asked in surprise, Could it be that your master's martial arts is stronger than Elder Ji's? Nie Tianhao nodded. That is indeed the case. Elder Ji's saber is emitting a red saber glow, but my master's saber glow is faintly golden. Golden glow. Hearing Nie Tianhao's words, Fan Yen was stunned. After a while, he asked in surprise, Really? Can your master really emit a golden glow? After hearing Fan Yan's question, Nie Tianhao nodded. That's true. However, my master hasn't been in this group for long. When he unleashes his full power, he can only emit a faint golden glow. He can't use it flexibly yet. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.